Chapter 137. Taking the black bead, Tion fiddled with it for a while, and then channeled a strand of demonic aura into the black bead. The result of this action made him exclaim in surprise. His originally indifferent attitude suddenly changed, and he stared at the black bead in his hand, carefully sizing it up. He thought to himself, this black bead doesn't seem simple. There's definitely something strange about it. It can actually devour my demonic aura. It's definitely not an ordinary treasure. When he channeled his demonic aura into the black bead, he felt that the demonic aura was like a stone falling into the sea. It disappeared without a trace. It didn't even float on the water. Moreover, the black bead didn't change at all after devouring a strand of demonic aura. It was still the same as before. Although it was shining and seemed very mysterious, it was still the same as before. Medusa casually flipped open the ancient book on refining weapons. She wasn't interested in the refining of the weapons at the beginning, so she quickly flipped to the section on the refining of the natal celestial weapon. After a brief glance, she knew that this ancient book was indeed authentic. The refining method of the natal celestial weapon was even more authentic. After all, the 9 Heavens 9 Extremes origin formation was real, and this formation was the key to the natal celestial weapon. After a quick glance, she closed it and put it away. She saw Tion looking at the black bead with a surprised expression. He said indifferently, I've had this black bead for hundreds of years. It could devour demonic aura and the essence of the moon. It should be a very mysterious treasure. It's just that I've carried it with me for hundreds of years, and I haven't been able to find out what's so special about it. There won't be any results if I keep it in my hands. Its ability to gather the essence of the moon is no longer of much help to me. It can still be of great help to you. Medusa's eyes swept across the black bead. She had carried it with her for hundreds of years, so how could she not know that? However, no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find out what's so special about it. Therefore, she took it out to exchange for the refining of the natal celestial weapon at this time. Tion nodded and carefully took out a jade box. He placed the black bead into the box and stored it in his bag of holding. He instinctively had a premonition that this black bead might be an incredible treasure. After putting it away, he looked at Medusa and said, although the refining of a natal demon weapon is not complicated, it requires a lot of heavenly treasures and spiritual stones to set up the blood refining array. It is not easy to refine a natal demon weapon that belongs to you. There was a hint of warning in his words. During this process, Tion knew very well that the first thing he needed to do was to consume a huge amount of spirit stones. It would be difficult to gather spirit stones. However, the spirit stones were not the most troublesome part. The real difficulty was how to collect those rare materials. Without good materials, it would be difficult to refine a satisfactory natal demon weapon. For example, the 7 Sins demonic zither was a rare treasure. The peerless jade embryo and the dragon tendon of a flood dragon could be refined into a rare magic weapon. However, they were condensed into a celestial weapon at the same time. It could be imagined how precious it was. Therefore, a natal demon weapon could be refined by anyone. It might not be able to refine a powerful demonic weapon, but it required those rare treasures that could only be found by chance. You don't need to remind me of this, Medusa said coldly. Her expression revealed a trace of certainty. In truth, in these past few years, she had already consciously collected some precious materials, especially the 5 colored snake scales that she shed when she transformed. These were excellent materials for refining demonic artifacts. Now that she got the refining method, he was afraid that she would prepare to refine it as soon as she went back. If you need spirit stones, I have a lot here. Seeing that the two had reached an agreement, Baihu said with a smile. When she smiled, the whole cave seemed to become bright in an instant. A unique and strange charm radiated from her body. Charming, but not glamorous. This was the natural charm of the Fox clan. Every time, it would naturally flow out. It exuded a different kind of charm. There's no need, big sister. Little sister has also collected spirit stones over the years. It should be enough to refine a natal demon artifact. Medusa's lips drew a beautiful arc. At this moment, Zhu Niao finished the 100-year-old wine in front of her in one gulp, savoring the unique taste of the monkey wine. She came back to her senses and blinked. Her originally clear eyes became a little blurred. She said, "Brother Di, Zhu also has something to tell you." Her voice was a little stuttering. It seemed that she was not strong enough to drink. Standing on the jade table, her body was a little swaying, looking naive and charming. She looked very cute. Oh, Di Tian heard, turned to look at her, and said, "If you have something to say, just say it." He had always felt that Zhu Niao was a little mysterious in his heart. What was mysterious was not Zhu Niao herself, but the sister behind her. Several times when Zhu Niao appeared, it was related to her sister or mentioned her. And every time, when the demons and the southern barbarian heard her sister, there was a natural respect in their expressions and tone. All of this showed that the sister behind Zhu Niao was definitely not an ordinary person. However, he had never had the chance to specifically know who her sister was. What did it mean? "Di, big brother, my big sister wants to see you." Zhu Niao said something that surprised everyone. "Your sister wants to see me?" When Di Tian heard this, his face could not help but show a thoughtful look. He secretly thought for a moment, then raised his head to look at Zhu Niao and said, "No, thank you for your sister's kindness, but this time I have something to do. I will arrange it, and then I will leave the southern barbarian." Unexpectedly, after thinking about it, he unexpectedly refused this invitation. "What? Brother Di, you don't want to see my sister?" Vermilion Bird's originally drunk and dizzy little head immediately sobered up upon hearing Sakura's refusal. She widened her eyes and looked at him with a look of disbelief. "Do you know that in the southern barbarian lands, it's very difficult for many demon clans to see my elder sister? Brother Di, if you go to see my sister, maybe you will gain a lot. Zhu, go back and apologize to your sister for me. I do have something to do and have to leave the southern barbarian as soon as possible." Di Tian said in a deep voice, "When I come back next time, I will go personally." After making a decision, he would not be swayed by anything. He still insisted on his own idea. It would be a lie to say that he was not curious about the sister behind Zhu Niao. Di Tian really wanted to know what kind of existence she was, but he naturally had his reasons for refusing. First of all, her sister was almost certain that she was a strong person who even Medusa, who had condensed her night and had to pay attention to. Moreover, he was not sure whether the other party knew the role he played in the last time when he consciously made a plan to use the whole southern barbarian evil beast to fight with the cultivators. It was because of his plan. If she knew that he was going this time, it might not be a good thing. Of course, there were many other reasons behind this, so he naturally had to decline this invitation. Di Tian said in his heart, "Although I also want to know who the most mysterious person in the southern barbarian is, now is not the best time to meet her. As long as I enter the secular world, learn the rhythm, and can exert the power of the seven sins demonic zither, even if Zhu sister is mysterious, at least I can have the ability to protect myself. Wait, when I come back, I will definitely uncover your mysterious face. Then I will go back and tell my sister." Zhu Niao looked at Di Tian curiously, but she did not continue to ask him to go to the 100 Flowers Valley. "Zhu, can you take me to see your sister?" At this time, Baihu suddenly interrupted with interest. "Count me in. It just so happens that I haven't gone to see your sister for many years." Unexpectedly, Medusa also said. They plan to go together. "Okay. Sister will be very happy to see Sister Tianxiang and you go together." Zhu Niao heard. Not only did she not refuse, but she happily agreed. She looked happy. Di Tian looked indifferent, picked up the gourd, filled the wine cup on the table, and chatted in the cave while drinking. Among them, Baihu was the most experienced, so in the conversation, she often talked about some secrets and legends on the mainland, various events, and even the general situation on the mainland. For example, the human countries near the southern barbarian, the north was Chu, and the west was Zhao. In the east, it was more chaotic. Three small countries fought all year round. Blood flowed like rivers, and many people could not survive. In many places, 9 out of 10 houses were empty. Some had died, and some had fled. It was miserable. After drinking a gourd of wine, Zhu Niao wanted to return to the Hundred Flowers Valley, and Bai Hu, who was curious, followed, leaving only Di Shirtian in the valley. Brother, brother. Not long after White Fox and the others left, White E's voice suddenly rang out. As it cried out, it quickly ran towards them. There was a deep sense of panic in its voice. Little White. Hearing that, Sakura was startled and hurriedly looked towards the entrance of the cave. He saw that Xiao Bai had already rushed in front of him. Seeing Sakura, who had already turned into a human, he wasn't unfamiliar at all. From his aura, he instantly knew that the person in front of him was his elder brother. She ran over and shouted, "Brother, not good. Sister Zifei is missing." Little White searched many places but couldn't find her. Little White's eyes were filled with tears. "What? Miss Zifei is missing?" Di Shirtian frowned slightly, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He had always been grateful to Zifei. After all, it was she who sent Little White to him without any hesitation, allowing the siblings to reunite. This favor could not be said to be small. But now, she was missing in the valley. How could he not be moved? To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chitian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 138. Well, brother, I just searched a lot of places, but I couldn't find Sister Fei. Could something have happened to her? Xiao Bai looked at Di Shirtian anxiously and said with a sobbing tone, "Don't worry. Maybe your sister Zifei just lost her way in the valley. I will ask King Kong to look for her immediately. As long as she is still in the valley, we will definitely find her." Di Shirtian reached out and picked up Xiao Bai. He patted her little head and said, "Don't worry. Since Miss Zifei brought you back, I will definitely not leave you alone." "Okay." Xiao Bai nodded obediently. Without saying anything more, he quickly walked out of the cave and sent a message to King Kong. King Kong immediately gathered the entire group of eagles and kept circling above the valley. Thousands of vultures covered the entire sky above the valley. One by one, they opened their sharp eagle eyes and scanned the valley inch by inch. Bai Susu also led the snakes distributed in the valley and quickly searched the ground. The sky and the ground were all covered in the search range. However, the strange thing was that after searching the entire Myriad Demon Valley, they did not find any trace of Zifei. It was as if Zifei had disappeared into thin air in the valley. It should be known that all the exits of the valley were guarded by subordinates. Those guards who were hiding in the dark did not see anyone leave. Her disappearance was very mysterious. It was very strange. Search. Go out of the valley and search the entire southern barbarian land. I don't believe that a living person would disappear inexplicably in the valley. We can't find any trace of her. Di Shirtian's face was cold, and his eyes were extremely sharp. He said coldly. He wondered in his heart, how did Zifei disappear? Although I've been focusing on practicing the mystic moon shaping technique these days, I can still find out what's going on in the valley. I've seen Zifei often these days, so why did she suddenly disappear? He was puzzled. He could not figure it out. Just as Di Shirtian was searching all over the mountain range, at this time, in the west of the Demon's Valley, there was a huge obelisk erected. On this obelisk, there were mysterious ancient seals, exuding an ancient and boundless aura. There was a faint burst of cold air. This was a tombstone. Behind the tombstone was a huge ancient tomb. However, they could only see the general appearance of the ancient tomb. They couldn't get close to it, as it was blocked by the mysterious power emitted by the tombstone. They didn't allow any living beings to approach them. From beginning to end, this area was filled with a mysterious aura. Not a single blade of grass grew in the surroundings, and birds and beasts were extinct. It was an extremely desolate area. Moreover, Di Shirtian had personally declared this place as a forbidden area. None of the living beings in the valley dared to approach this place again. However, there was an exception today. A plainly dressed girl with an average appearance was staring at the ancient tomb in front of her without blinking. She was looking at the tombstone in front of her with curiosity. How strange. Something seems to be calling out to me. If Di Shirtian saw this girl, he would naturally know that she was Zi Fei, who he was currently searching everywhere for. In Kong and the others had investigated other places in the valley, but they did not come here. The strangeness of this place made them subconsciously ignore it. Moreover, this was the forbidden area of the valley, so they would not rush in rashly. That was why I didn't find any traces of Zi Fei. Otherwise, he would have definitely found something. Pitter-patter. Zi Fei approached the tombstone step by step. Her crisp footsteps reverberated in the surroundings, which was extremely strange. However, it was very strange. Last time when Di Shirtian approached this tombstone, it immediately erupted with an astonishing cold air and almost instantly froze him. If it wasn't for the mysterious power of the peerless jade embryo protecting him at that time, he would have been frozen and his life would have been extinguished. What was strange was that when Zi Fei approached the tombstone did not erupt with that astonishing cold air. It just stood between the heavens and the earth as usual, as if it had existed since ancient times. After walking past the tombstone, the ancient tomb behind it appeared in front of her. An ancient tomb door, covered with various patterns, was tightly shut. The patterns on the tomb door looked extremely terrifying. The wings of a demon god with wings were broken. The heavens and the earth were collapsing. The sun and the moon were falling, and millions of blood rain whistled down. The vivid and lifelike patterns made people tremble in fear, and their hearts were filled with boundless fear. It seemed to be narrating some secret history that had happened in the past and was buried in the river of time. Kacha! When Zi Fei arrived in front of the tomb and was about to carefully examine the terrifying patterns on the door of the tomb that had not changed for tens of thousands of years suddenly rose up with a crisp rumble. The moment the ancient tomb opened, an irresistible suction force suddenly spewed out from the tomb. Almost in the blink of an eye, it enveloped Zi Fei and pulled her into the tomb. This unforeseen event only made Zi Fei let out a short cry of surprise. In the blink of an eye, she was pulled into the ancient tomb and disappeared. Bang! The rising tomb door suddenly stopped the moment Zi Fei entered, and at that moment, it fell back down with a bang. In the blink of an eye, it returned to its original tightly shut appearance, exuding an ancient aura. It quietly echoed between the heavens and the earth. The surroundings once again returned to the deathly silence. The ancient tomb was still the original ancient tomb, and the tombstone was still standing on the ground. It had existed since ancient times. It was impossible to tell that a strange change had occurred here before. 3 days later, Di Shirtian was dressed in a long black robe. His black hair danced in the wind, and he looked particularly proud and aloof. In front of him, Bai Chihua, Bai Su, and the others stood in a line respectfully in front of him. Little White was snuggling close to his feet. You all should already know the purpose of calling everyone over this time. Sakura nodded his head and looked around at all the subordinates in front of him in a dignified manner before he opened his mouth and said, "Your Majesty, are you really going to leave?" Bai Su asked in an urgent voice. Chihua and the others also looked at him with wide eyes. Clearly, this question was very important. Di Shirtian said without hesitation, "That's right. This king has important matters to attend to in the secular world, and it can't be delayed. However, this time I will go, and once I finish my business and get what I want, I will return. 3 to 5 months at the shortest, and no more than 3 years at the longest. I will definitely return." After saying that, he paused and took a deep breath. His eyes shone brightly, and he said in a deep voice, "In this period of time, you will cultivate according to the cultivation method I have given you. If possible, you must become a monster as soon as possible. Remember, this king does not want trash as his subordinates." The last sentence was said with a hint of viciousness. The king mark on his forehead flickered violently. A mountainous and hellish aura pressed down on Chi Hua and the others. He said coldly, "This king wants experts who can follow me and conquer the world." "Yes, my king." When Chi Hua and the others heard this, their eyes shone brightly. A strong fighting spirit and pride rose in them. They answered without hesitation. His eyes were filled with a resolute expression, and there was an incomparable thirst for power within them. During this period of time, they had already made rapid progress. With all kinds of medicinal pills and cultivation methods, compared to before, who knew how many times faster they were in their cultivation. Chihua was already preparing to open the third meridian and run through the whole body, preparing to be promoted to the peak of the demon. As for Bai Yu and the others, they were also accumulating strength and preparing to break through the next level. Their progress was fast. If they waited for the monkey wine to be brewed, this speed would be even faster. However, this speed was a little slow compared to Di Shirtian. "Yes." Di Shirtan nodded with satisfaction and said, "The demon clan in the southern wilderness will definitely not touch the myriad demon valley for my sake. During this period of time, you all stay in the valley and cultivate in seclusion. Also, Little White will stay in the valley. You must take good care of it. Brother, Little White wants to go with you. Don't leave Little White behind." When Little White heard this, it stretched out its claws and grabbed his clothes. It pulled hard and looked at him pitifully. When Di Shirtian saw this, he could not bear it. However, he did not relent and only comforted it gently. "Little White, I'm going out this time because I have something important to do. Your sister, Bai, will be recuperating in the valley during this period of time. You can be with her. Remember, she's a strong demon. If you can get her to give you some pointers, you'll definitely gain something. Moreover, it won't be long before Big Brother comes back. Time will pass very quickly in the midst of cultivation." He did not have absolute strength to protect Little White now. He even relied on a secret technique to transform. His cultivation was far from that of a real demon. Moreover, after cultivating, Little White already had a demonic aura. If he brought it to the secular world, it would be like a radar that could be noticed by those immortal cultivators at any time. This was not what he wanted. After comforting her, Little White released her claws with tears in her eyes and said, "Brother, you have to come back quickly. Little White will cultivate seriously." Di Shirtian patted her little head gently and turned to leave. He walked unusually decisively. His footsteps were neither fast nor slow. When he stepped on the ground, there were rhythmic sounds. His entire body was shrouded in a layer of arrogance as he walked into the tunnel that led to the outside. In the blink of an eye, his figure was swallowed by the darkness in the cave. Brother, Little White will definitely work hard. In the future, Little White will also save Mother. Little White watched Di Shirtian's figure disappear into the cave and secretly made up her mind. You're really carefree when you leave. However, I'd like to see how far your cultivation will go when you return in the future. This time, I'll help you guard the Thousand Demon Valley temporarily. I wonder what it would be like to play a complete song with a demonic zither that was refined from a peerless jade embryo. Bai who had left with the vermilion bird earlier, was standing on the waterfall peak at some point in time. She quietly watched Di Shirtian leave in an unusually carefree manner. Her lips curled into a smile as she muttered to herself, "In the new week, I hope that everyone can cast a few votes while reading the books. The 10,000 Demons Tournament has officially begun." Chapter 139. Well, brother, I just searched a lot of places, but I couldn't find Sister Fei. Could something have happened to her? Xiaobai looked at Di Shirtian anxiously and said with a sobbing tone, "Don't worry. Maybe your sister Zifei just lost her way in the valley. I will ask King Kong to look for her immediately. As long as she is still in the valley, we will definitely find her." Di Shirtian reached out and picked up Xiaobai. He patted her little head and said, "Don't worry. Since Miss Zifei brought you back, I will definitely not leave you alone." "Okay." Xiaobai nodded obediently. Without saying anything more, he quickly walked out of the cave and sent a message to Inkong. Inkong immediately gathered the entire group of eagles and kept circling above the valley. Thousands of vultures covered the entire sky above the valley. One by one, they opened their sharp eagle eyes and scanned the valley inch by inch. Bai Susu also led the snakes distributed in the valley and quickly searched the ground. The sky and the ground were all covered in the search range. However, the strange thing was that after searching the entire Myriad Demon Valley, they did not find any trace of Zifei. It was as if Zifei had disappeared into thin air in the valley. It should be known that all the exits of the valley were guarded by subordinates. Those guards who were hiding in the dark did not see anyone leave. Her disappearance was very mysterious. It was very strange. Search. Go out of the valley and search the entire southern barbarian land. I don't believe that a living person would disappear inexplicably in the valley. We can't find any trace of her. Deshirtian's face was cold, and his eyes were extremely sharp. He said coldly. He thought to himself, how did Zifei go missing? Although I've been focusing on practicing the dark moon shaping technique these days, I can still find out what's going on in the valley. I've seen Zifei often these days, but why did she suddenly disappear? He was puzzled. He could not figure out. Just as Deshirtian was searching all over the mountain range, at this time, in the west of the Demon's Valley, there was a huge obelisk erected. On this obelisk, there were mysterious ancient seals, exuding an ancient and boundless aura. There was a faint burst of cold air. This was a tombstone. Behind the tombstone was a huge ancient tomb. However, they could only see the general appearance of the ancient tomb. They couldn't get close to it, as the mysterious power emitted by the tombstone blocked their view. No living beings were allowed to approach them. This area was filled with a mysterious aura since the beginning. Not a single blade of grass grew in the surroundings, and birds and beasts were extinct. It was an extremely desolate area. Moreover, this place was still sealed as a forbidden area by Deshirtian, and none of the living beings in the valley dared to approach this place again. However, there was an exception today. A plainly dressed girl with an average appearance was staring at the ancient tomb in front of her without blinking. She was looking at the tombstone in front of her with curiosity. How strange. There seems to be something calling out to me. If Deshirtian saw this girl, he would naturally know that she was Zifei, who he was currently searching everywhere for. Kong and the others had explored other places in the valley, but they did not come here. The strangeness of this place made them subconsciously ignore it. Moreover, this was a forbidden area in the valley, so they wouldn't rush in recklessly. That was why he didn't find any traces of Zifei. Otherwise, he would have definitely found something. Pata pata. Zifei approached the tombstone step by step. Her clear and melodious footsteps reverberated in the surroundings, appearing exceptionally strange. However, it was very strange. The last time when Deshirtian approached the tombstone, it immediately erupted with a shocking cold air. Almost instantaneously, it froze him. If it wasn't for the mysterious power from the exceptional jade embryo protecting him at that time, he would have already been frozen and his life would have been extinguished. What was strange was that when Zifei approached the tombstone did not erupt with that shocking cold air. It just stood between heaven and earth as usual, as if it had existed since ancient times. After walking past the tombstone, the ancient tomb behind it appeared in front of her eyes. A simple tomb door, covered with various patterns, was tightly closed. The patterns on the tomb door looked extremely terrifying. The wings of the gods and demons were broken. The heaven and earth were collapsing. The sun and the moon were falling, and millions of blood rain whistled down. The vivid and lifelike patterns made people tremble in fear, and their hearts were filled with boundless fear. It seemed to be narrating some secret history that had happened before, buried in the river of time. Kacha. When Zifei arrived in front of the ancient tomb and was about to carefully examine the terrifying patterns on the tomb door, the ancient tomb that hadn't changed in tens of thousands of years suddenly opened with a clear rumbling sound, and the tomb door suddenly rose up with a loud rumble. The moment the ancient tomb opened, an irresistible suction force suddenly spewed out from the tomb. Almost in the blink of an eye, it enveloped Zifei and pulled her into the tomb. This change only made Zifei let out a short cry of surprise, and in the blink of an eye, she was pulled into the ancient tomb and disappeared. Bang! The rising tomb door suddenly stopped the moment Zifei entered, and at that moment, it fell back down with a bang. In the blink of an eye, it returned to its original tightly closed appearance, exuding an ancient aura. It quietly echoed between heaven and earth. The surroundings once again returned to the original deathly silence. The ancient tomb was still the original ancient tomb, and the tombstone was still standing on the ground. It had existed since ancient times. There was no sign that a strange change had occurred here before. 3 days later, Di Shirtian was dressed in a black robe, and his black hair danced in the wind. He looked particularly proud and aloof as he stood on the flat grassland in the valley. In front of him, Bai Yu, Qihua, Bai Su, and the others stood in a line respectfully in front of him. Little White was snuggling close to his feet. You should already know the purpose of calling everyone over this time. Sakura nodded his head and looked around at all the subordinates in front of him in a dignified manner before he opened his mouth and said, "King, are you really going to leave?" Bai Su asked anxiously. Qihua and the others also looked at him with wide eyes. Obviously, they were very concerned about this question. Sakura said without any hesitation, "That's right. This time, this king has an important matter and must go to the secular world. Moreover, it can't be delayed. However, this time, as long as I finish my business and get what I want, I will return. The shortest is 3 to 5 months, and the longest is not more than 3 years. I will definitely return." After he finished speaking, he paused for a moment and took a deep breath. His eyes lit up and he said in a deep voice, "During this period of time, all of you should cultivate according to the cultivation method that I have given you. If possible, you must advance to demonic beast as soon as possible. Remember, this king does not want trash under his command." The last sentence was filled with viciousness. The king mark on his forehead was sparkling intensely. His chi was like a mountain in a prison, pressing down on Qihua and the others. He said coldly, "I want strong cultivators who can follow me. I want strong cultivators who can follow me." "Yes, king." When Qihua and the others heard this, their eyes shone brightly, and a strong fighting spirit and pride rose in them. They answered without hesitation. Their eyes were filled with determination, and there was an incomparable thirst for power. During this period of time, they had been making rapid progress. With all kinds of medicinal pills and cultivation methods, their cultivation speed was much faster than before. Qihua was already preparing to open the 3rd meridian and run through the whole body, preparing to be promoted to the peak of the demon. As for Bai Yu and the others, they were also accumulating strength and preparing to break through the next level. Their progress was fast. If they waited for the monkey wine to be brewed, this speed would be even faster. However, this speed, compared to Di Shirtian, was a little slow. "Yes." Di Shirtian nodded with satisfaction and said, "For my sake, the demons in the southern wilderness will definitely not touch the myriad demon valley. During this time, you all stay in the valley and cultivate in seclusion. Also, Little White will stay in the valley. You must take good care of it. Brother, Little White wants to go with you. Don't leave Little White behind." When Little White heard this, it stretched out its claws and grabbed his clothes. It pulled hard and looked at him pitifully. When Sakura saw this, his heart couldn't bear it. However, he didn't loosen his mouth and only comforted gently, "Shall Bai be good?" This time, Big Brother went out to do something important. "Your big sister White Fox will be recuperating in the valley during this period of time. You can be with her. Remember, she is an expert in the demon clan. If you can get some pointers from her, you will definitely gain something. Moreover, it won't be long before Big Brother comes back. Time will pass very quickly in the midst of cultivation." He did not have absolute strength to protect Little White now. He even relied on a secret technique to transform. His cultivation was far from that of a real demon. Moreover, after cultivating, Little White already had a demonic aura. If he brought it to the secular world, it would be like a radar that could be noticed by those immortal cultivators at any time. This was not what he wanted. After comforting her, Little White released her claws with tears in her eyes and said, "Brother, you have to come back quickly. Little White will cultivate seriously." Deshertion patted her little head gently and turned to leave. He walked unusually decisively. His footsteps were neither fast nor slow. When he stepped on the ground, there were rhythmic sounds. His entire body was shrouded in a layer of arrogance as he walked into the tunnel that led to the outside. In the blink of an eye, his figure was swallowed by the darkness in the cave. "Brother, Little White will definitely work hard. In the future, Little White will also save Mother." Little White watched Deshertion's figure disappear into the cave and secretly made up her mind. "You are really carefree when you leave. However, I want to see how far your cultivation will go when you return in the future. This time, I will help you guard the Thousand Demon Valley temporarily. I wonder what it will be like to play a complete song with a demonic zither that was refined from a peerless jade embryo." By who had left with the vermilion bird earlier, was standing on Waterfall Peak at some point in time. She quietly watched Deshertion leave in an unusually carefree manner, and the corners of her mouth curved into a smile as she muttered to herself, "It's a new week again. I hope that everyone can submit a few recommendations while reading the book." The curtains of the Thousand Goblins series have officially begun. Chapter 140. Pata. Pata. In a dense mountain forest, a tall black-robed man walked forward step by step. Beneath his feet were layers of dead branches and leaves. As he stepped on them, the branches broke, creating a short burst of crisp sounds. His black hair casually draped behind his head, and when a light breeze blew past, the black hair danced wildly. Looking in front of him, there was a purple mark on his forehead, and his face was as cold as a knife. He calmly shuttled through the tall, ancient trees. He walked towards the east. Baihu said that the north is Chu, the west is Zhao, and the east is chaotic. It's remote, and a few small countries are constantly fighting. Sakura left the myriad Demon Valley. After pondering for a while, he walked toward the east. He pondered, "I can't go to the north, and I can't go to the Chu country. Previously, the people who tried to capture my princess time and time again should be from the Chu country. The Zhao country is a big country that can stand on equal footing with the Chu country. The Chu country is also very stable. In this way, there will definitely be many cultivators in the secular world. It's easy to be exposed. I can't go there for the time being." Although the East was in a state of chaos, it also meant that these countries might not have the backing of powerful immortal sections. It will give me a chance to fish in troubled waters. Chaos was good. In chaos, people would die, and dead people would have souls. And souls were precisely what he wanted the most. He really wanted to know whether or not his Purple King mark would undergo some miraculous changes if he absorbed enough souls. He was more interested in the bodies of those humans. Although they were not as good as the bodies of cultivators, no matter how small a mosquito was, they were still meat. Moreover, the human body was born with a Tao body. It was especially suitable for cultivation and was blessed by the heavens. The essence and blood contained in it were quite large and pure. After refining it, it could also strengthen the body. Unconsciously, Deshertion's perspective of things had already leaned towards his identity as a demon. In his previous life, if he was a human, he would definitely not have such a shocking idea. Taking souls, taking human bodies, he did not care about them at all and planned to devour them all. Now, even if he was a human, he was probably a fierce person. While thinking, he walked forward. Along the way, he would take out a jade box and pick any good spirit herbs he saw. These things were all treasures. If they were refined into pills, they would be treasures that could increase one's cultivation. Furthermore, Deshertion was much stronger than the others. He could swallow them directly and put them into the Tao refining cauldron. Naturally, the Tao refining cauldron would extract all the essence from the spiritual herbs. There was absolutely no room for waste. Imperial Wind Technique. After walking for a distance, Deshertion frowned slightly. The southern wilderness was too big. If he just walked out, he was afraid that it would take too much time. He paused slightly and spat out a sentence. Suddenly, the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual chi fluctuated, and a black gust of wind blew from the ground. Waves of demonic chi rose like smoke signals. Di Shirtian's body rose into the air in this black demonic wind. Hiding in layers of demonic chi, he quickly rushed to the east. The spells in the cultivation world were all full of demonic chi when he used them. Originally, this imperial wind technique was used to control the invisible wind, but now, when he used it, it was completely the opposite. Instead, it was full of demonic chi. At first glance, one could tell that it was not a good wind. It was very frightening. Even if ordinary people saw it, they would immediately know that the person who controlled the demonic wind was definitely an evil and fierce person. Riding the demonic wind, he whistled over the southern wilderness. Finally, he left the southern wilderness. Ow! Just after Di Shirtian left the southern wilderness, he continued to rush forward. He planned to find a village or town where people lived first, and then began to look for a zither master to learn the zither. However, just after flying over a few mountains and approaching the human residence, an unyielding tiger roar suddenly rose into the sky from a forest not far away. Hey, there's a tiger, and it's a tiger with the cultivation of a demon. In this roar, it seems that it's in danger. Di Shirtian's figure hidden in the demonic chi suddenly paused. He raised his eyebrows, and a strong, murderous aura suddenly rose on his face. Someone dares to kill my tiger? Tiger slay or die. His eyes were bone-chilling, and the light that shot out seemed to completely freeze the void in front of him. With a shake of his body, he dispersed the demonic wind, fell back to the ground, and quickly rushed to the place where the tiger roar came from. Since he was reborn as a tiger, he had also regarded the tiger as his own clan. This was like a human. How could a human watch a large group of his own kind be slaughtered by a different species? Killing a tiger in front of Di Shirtian was undoubtedly violating the taboo in his heart. Therefore, when he heard that sad roar, a strong killing intent emerged from his body without thinking. At this time, in an open space in the forest, a young man wearing brocade clothes, who looked to be 17 or 18 years old, glared angrily at the three middle-aged men in front of him who were full of sarcasm. He held a green sword in his hand and pointed it at the three men, but his eyes kept looking to the side from time to time. At the side, a big multicolored tiger was covered in wounds all over its body. Blood had already seeped through its fur. Its tiger's might was awe-inspiring, but looked very bleak and desolate. Traces of grief and indignation appeared in its eyes. It pounced on one of the men in green again and again, but every time, the man in green controlled a golden flying sword to cut a terrible wound on its body, so deep that its bones could be seen. The man in green had a teasing look in his eyes. That tiger in his hands did not have the slightest ability to resist. What price did my brother pay to hire people from the Hall of Worship like you to kill me? Have you really forgotten the rules of the Hall of Worship? When a young man in brocade clothes saw the dense wounds on the tiger's body, his eyes showed deep pain. However, he knew that even if he went over, there was no way he could help it. On the contrary, he could only escape here by relying on the strength of his spirit beast. After being chased for 3 days and 3 nights, Oyangming's spirit beast power had been overdrawn to its limit. By the time Oyangming arrived here, he was already aware that he would probably be buried in this uninhabited wilderness. Looking at the 4 men in front of him, he felt waves of hatred in his heart. As soon as he saw them, he had already guessed who had sent them. It was also because he knew that he felt heartache. Second Prince, don't blame us brothers. It's really your brother who gave us a reward that we couldn't refuse. The leader of the group, a blue-robed man, had a cold expression. When he mentioned the reward, a hint of greed flashed through his eyes from time to time. He said, "The reason why you were able to escape so far was all because of this spirit beast by your side. However, you won't be so lucky today. You and your spirit beast will die together." I'm sorry. Although they said they were sorry, they did not look sorry at all. There was only a trace of greed. Third brother, you're really vicious. For the sake of the throne, you actually did such a vicious thing to me, your elder brother." The young man in brocade clothes looked up to the sky and roared with grief and indignation. Roar! Meanwhile, the multicolored tiger had finally reached its limit. It had lost too much blood, causing its movements to become slow. Finally, under the mocking gaze of the azure-clothed man, the golden flying sword pierced into his head with a piuchi sound. "Do it, get rid of him. Then we can go back and get our reward." The blue-robed man in the lead waved his hand lightly and said coldly, "Who dares to kill my tiger tribe? Tiger slay or die." Just as the blue-robed man's voice fell, a cold roar suddenly exploded in the air above the field. The sound was like thunder. With a loud roar, the surrounding trees rustled and trembled. Endless leaves rustled down from the sky. They danced in the sky. The sound contained a kind of soul-stirring, domineering aura. A pressure as heavy as a mountain covered the sky and the earth. It surged over like an avalanche and instantly covered the entire area. Bang! Just as he finished speaking, a tall and sturdy black-robed man stomped heavily on the ground. A terrifying power gushed out from under his feet. Suddenly, terrifying cracks appeared on the ground. They were densely packed like a spiderweb. A monstrous, ferocious aura swept over. The person who came was D. Shirtion. D. Shirtion stood on the ground. His eyes were like sharp arrows as they swept over the area in front of him. After his gaze swept around, it instantly fell on the big multicolored tiger who was lying on the ground with a ferocious, flying sword in its head. The light in the tiger's eyes had already begun to fade away. A kind of soaring resentment burst out from his body. When he saw D. Shirtion appear, he seemed to be able to feel the strong aura of the same kind that emanated from him. His originally fading gaze suddenly focused. He turned his head and looked back. Suddenly, a strong light flashed in his eyes. He said, "King." He only spat out one word before the light in his eyes dissipated. The last trace of life in his body also disappeared. "Damn it, all of you deserve to die." D. Shirtion's pupils contracted violently the moment the big multicolored tiger died. He narrowed his eyes in his slits, and a cold light with a murderous intent shot out like a sharp blade. He swept his gaze across the 4 cultivators opposite him. 2 foundation establishment cultivators and 2 late-stage weapon refinement cultivators. Demonic aura. What a strong demonic aura. Oh no, he's a transformed demon. The black demonic aura emanating from D. Shirtion's body was unavoidably seen by the 4 cultivators. With this look, their hearts and souls were almost frightened out of their wits. Since embarking on the path of cultivation, they naturally had some understanding of some things that transcended the secular world. They also had a superficial understanding of the demon race. Of course, he knew what a transformed demon clan member represented. It represented a powerful existence that even a nascent soul old monster would not dare to boast that he could definitely kill. When they recognized him, their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. A look of fear appeared in their eyes at the same time. Why would a transformed demon appear here? The blue-robed man howled in despair. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 141. The moment they saw D. Shirtion, a sense of hopelessness rose in their hearts. They couldn't tell that D. Shirtion wasn't actually a demon with an inner core. He was merely a demon that relied on a secret technique to forcibly transform into a human form. His actual strength wasn't as strong as they imagined. Of course, even so, with D. Shirtion's abilities, even if he couldn't win against a core formation cultivator, he could still escape without a problem. The few cultivators in front of him, even if there were a few more of them, might not be able to defeat him. Brothers, let's fight him to the death. After a moment of despair, the blue-robed cultivator's eyes flashed with determination. He roared and formed a strange hand seal. He shouted, "Skyfrost technique. Freeze demon." Immediately, the surrounding spiritual energy shook violently. The temperature dropped sharply. Specks of white frost fell from the sky and landed on the ground. The grass and trees on the ground were instantly covered in white frost. The dense cold air caused the surroundings to become bone-chilling. It was as if even the air was about to freeze. When one breathed, even one's flesh and blood were about to freeze. A mass of pale white frost rapidly condensed, ferociously descending towards Sakura. Kill! The green-robed man was also one of the two Foundation establishment cultivators. When he saw the blue-robed man in the lead make a move, he didn't hesitate at all and tacitly cooperated with him to burst out a sword technique. The golden flying sword lightly vibrated and actually instantly split into 3 swords, forming a triangle shape and enveloping Sakura under the sword light. The swift and fierce sword chi was filled with a murderous aura. Attacked together. Although the other two were aura-refining cultivators, at this moment, they also knew that in front of a demon that had taken human form, running away was most likely impossible. At this moment, they also threw caution to the wind and each took out their own magic tools. One was 3 black sabers. The other was a green ring that glowed with a green light. At the same time, they threw their weapons out. The 3 black sabers exuded an evil aura, as if they were Dharma artifacts of the evil Tao. They had a demonic air about them. Oomph! You dare to kill my people. You will pay with your lives. Di Shirtian looked at the overwhelming attacks coming towards him. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and his killing intent surged. His hand quickly formed a seal to cast the fireball technique. As soon as the seal was formed, the demonic chi in his body quickly spread out along with the seal. In the blink of an eye, a black fireball mysteriously appeared in front of him with a whoosh sound. This fireball was not like the ones cast by ordinary immortal cultivators, which emitted crimson flames. Instead, it was a type of black demonic fire. A demonic aura was emitted from the flames. This mysterious fireball contained a huge amount of power. Under the control of Di Shirtian, it quickly bombarded the falling frost. At the same time, both of his hands turned into claws. Strands of demonic aura quickly rolled out and condensed on the surface of his hands. Moreover, both his palms suddenly reversed. In an instant, long black hair grew on them. His fingers also turned into 2 pitch-black tiger claws. With a slight movement, hundreds of claw shadows flashed in front of him. Black claw marks tore through the air, making a terrifying sound. Bang, bang, bang. The tiger claws bombarded those ritual implements, and a terrifying sound of metal colliding rang out. Moreover, every time they collided, a strong demonic aura would also pour out onto the ritual implements. The sharp claws could be said to be terrifying, and they left claw marks on the ritual implements. Magic tools had always been connected to the cultivator's mind. When the magic tools were damaged, the 3 cultivators suddenly trembled. They tasted something sweet in their mouths and spat out a mouthful of blood, forming a bloody mist in front of them. I'll fight you to the death. Falling wood technique. The sky frost technique that the blue-robed man had cast earlier collided with the mysterious fireball. The blazing flames contained in the fireball exploded together with the frost and completely dissipated. Seeing that the 3 cultivators beside him had been seriously injured in just one collision, his eyes flashed with a trace of madness. His hands quickly formed a complicated seal. More than half of his true chi poured into the seal. As soon as the seal was completed, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly shook violently. In the sky, a green light flashed, and a thick green wood condensed in the green light. In the green wood, there was a trace of a powerful aura. From the sky, it fell with a bang, completely covering a large area around Di Shirtian. A huge green would smash down on his head. Kill! The other 3 people also spat out a mouthful of blood essence on their magic tools. Immediately, those magic tools flashed with spiritual light, emitting an aura that was several times stronger than usual. Once again, they bombarded out. However, they didn't notice that after the blue-robed man executed the falling wood technique, a trace of a mysterious expression flickered behind his deranged expression. His hands didn't stop at all. In an instant, another strange seal was condensed. Bang! After the seal was completed, a burst of thick white fog suddenly exploded. Like a smoke bomb, the white fog rolled. In the blink of an eye, the whole place was covered in the white fog. In the dance, there were strange sounds, and from time to time, the ferocious faces of ghosts and demons were condensed. However, the blue-robed man used this white fog to escape. He mysteriously appeared hundreds of feet away. Once he appeared, he quickly fled into the distance. When a misty rain soul-stealing technique was used, this technique would produce a white fog to confuse the enemy. It was a bluff and did not have much offensive power. At the same time, he could borrow the power of the fog to instantly escape hundreds of feet away. It was a strange technique used for escape. My three brothers, please don't blame me. A transformed demon is way too terrifying. If we were to stay there together, we would all die. Instead of 4, it's better for 3 to die. Once I get out of here and return to China with that thing, I'll definitely become stronger than ever before. Then, I'll come back to avenge you guys. The blue-robed man cried out in his heart as he fled into the distance. It was as if he was giving himself a reason to escape. Bang, bang, bang. A terrifying rumbling sound rang out from the white mist. Sakura's sharp eyes swept across the white mist. This mist was actually unable to obstruct his vision. His 2 tiger claws fiercely waved and countless claw shadows blasted out above his head, landing on the greenwood. His powerful demonic chi rushed into the greenwood, causing it to explode on the spot. Then his feet moved, pulling out countless clear afterimages behind him. Step by step, he heavily stepped on the ground. His body was like a cannonball, mixed with powerful tiger chi, and rushed in front of the 3 cultivators. Crack! 3 loud sounds rang out in quick succession, and 3 large holes appeared on the chests of the 3 cultivators. The holes pierced through their bodies, and countless pieces of flesh burst out. Want to escape? You killed my people. If I let you escape, then how can I, Di Shirtion, be the king of the southern barbarians in the future? Di Shirtion's eyes were full of coldness and incomparable coldness. He stepped forward and stepped on the ground. The ground shook violently, and dense spiderweb-like cracks emerged from the place where his feet landed. Then his body took advantage of this huge force and fiercely stepped forward. Every step he took was dozens of feet. On his body, black demon chi spurted out like ink. The monstrous demon chi set off an infinite fierceness. It was incomparably cold and domineering. Kill! In a momentum that rushed out, there was a murderous intent that if he wanted to kill, no one could escape. This scene, in fact, happened in the time of a breath. It couldn't be more short, but it was in this short period of time that 3 cultivators died in a row. One of them was a Foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, he immediately began to chase after another. This fierceness and coldness really made people tremble. They felt a chill in their hearts. And all these fell into the eyes of one person. It was the young man in brocade. At this time, he was looking at Di Shirtion's cold and arrogant back. He opened his mouth wide and couldn't close it for a long time. Heavens! Could this be the powerful cultivator who chased after me for 3 days and 3 nights? An expert who was worshipped by my imperial family, yet he was so easily killed by that man. No, they said he was a demon. A deep shock emerged from the bottom of his heart. At the same time, there was a kind of deep awe in his eyes as he looked at Di Shirtion's back. This was a kind of awe for the strong. This kind of awe had nothing to do with humans or demons. Bang! Di Shirtion's sharp eyes stared at the blue-robed man who was fleeing forward on a cyan flying sword. His face was cold. His left foot stomped heavily on the ground, and his burly body flew into the air. His right hand, which had turned into a tiger's claw, crazily rushed into it. Boom, boom, boom. Under the infusion of the demon essence, the tiger's claw burst out a strong demon aura and emitted bursts of black light. In the light, The tiger's claw expanded violently. In almost the blink of an eye, it became the size of a millstone. The pitch-black tiger's claws, which were glowing with a metallic black light, suddenly contracted. The sharp claws tore through the air. The air under the claws seemed to be solidified. Aiming at the blue-robed man's head, the claws slapped down. Bang! A terrifying explosion sounded in the air. You won't let me live. Today, I will die with you. Explode. Under the claws, the blue-robed man, who was desperately trying to escape, felt the terrifying aura coming from above his head. His face became abnormally ferocious, and a trace of madness emerged in his eyes. Under this claw, he felt the aura of death. Being chased by Tirtian again, he also expected that this time he was afraid that he would not be able to escape. In his heart, he made up his mind and crazily circulated the vital essence in his body. Countless blood gushed out from his pores, and a terrible power rose violently in his body. Rumble! The blue-robed man's body became abnormally ferocious as he reversed his quintessence. He instantly swelled up several times, like an inflated balloon. Then, with a loud boom, he exploded. A cloud of thick blood mist instantly covered an area of 100 meters. In the blink of an eye, everything in the surroundings was shattered by that terrifying power. If you still have recommendation tickets, please help me vote for a few. To be continued, please go to www.chijian.com for more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 142. Ding Dong. Amidst the bloody mist filled with violent energy, the sound of a zither mysteriously rang out. The sound of the zither was extremely penetrating. Even the explosion of the Foundation establishment cultivator's self-destruction was unable to conceal the sound. If anyone were to look, they would discover that the black-robed Tirtian was standing in the middle of the bloody mist. His expression was cold as he held a jade zither in his left hand and plucked at the strings with his right. As the sound of the zither spread out, rings of invisible sound waves spread out with him as the epicenter, filling an area of 3 meters around him. As soon as the terrifying energy from the bloody mist entered these 3 meters, it would be dispersed and annihilated by the rings of invisible sound waves. However, the strings on the jade zither were straight and straight. Tirtian's eyes were filled with solemnity. It was clear that Tirtian was not as relaxed as he appeared to be. Ding dong! Ding dong! His right hand plucked the 9 strings of the zither without any pattern, causing the zither music to turn into waves of sound waves that blocked the terrifying destructive energy surging towards him. Between his fingers, traces of black light flickered continuously. The powerful demonic essence within his body continuously surged out from the demonic abode. When a Foundation establishment cultivator self-destructed, it was equivalent to reversing all of his true essence and even his blood essence, exploding with 10 times or even 100 times the power. This power was filled with destruction and violence. It would destroy everything within its range that could be destroyed. Its power was almost equivalent to the full force of a core formation cultivator's attack. The difference was that a core formation cultivator could casually unleash this kind of power, but a Foundation establishment cultivator had to pay the price of his life in exchange for the only chance to unleash this kind of power. The price to pay for this was directly proportional to the power of the explosion. Boom, boom, boom. The bloody mist wreaked havoc for a full 15 minutes before finally dissipating slowly. Ding dong! Sakura once again plucked the zither strings, and the invisible sound waves instantly swept away the blood mist in the surroundings like a tide. If a cultivator self-destructed, it would be quite frightening. A mere Foundation establishment cultivator could actually unleash such terrifying power. I wonder if a core formation cultivator's self-destruction would have the destructive power of a nascent soul cultivator. Tirtian's hand turned slightly, and the jade zither turned into a ray of jade light and returned to the demonic abode. Looking at the scene before him, he couldn't help but be vigilant. The ground had been blasted into a huge crater large enough to bury hundreds of people. Countless cracks were densely distributed in all directions. Everything around it had been completely destroyed by the violent explosion. It caused the surrounding 100 meters to become an empty and barren land, as if it had been completely plowed. The blue-robed man had already perished. Just when Sakura was about to turn around and leave, suddenly, when he turned around, the corner of his eyes caught a glimmer of sparkling light. He couldn't help but stop his action of leaving. He fixed his eyes on the place where the sparkling light came from. Surprisingly, on the ground, there was a simple and unadorned jade slip that was shining with sparkling light. It was at the place where the blue-robed cultivator had self-destructed. The power of the explosion just now was enough to destroy the cultivator's storage pouch and everything inside. Even the storage pouch was destroyed, but this jade slip didn't suffer the slightest bit of damage. Could it be a good item? In an instant, Sakura's mind began to spin rapidly. Generally, jade slips were used to store all kinds of information. For example, the most common one was to store some ancient books of cultivation methods, or to store some kind of information, and so on. This was because jade slips could store memories and information. Therefore, in the immortal cultivation world, this kind of jade slip had always been very common. There were all kinds of cultivation methods and spells, but only the most basic ones. Only the basic cultivation methods of the chi condensation stage were recorded in books. Even ordinary people could read these ancient books and cultivate according to the methods in the ancient books. However, jade slips were different. Jade slips could store cultivation methods and information. Similarly, they required divine sense to be engraved. If one wanted to read the contents of the jade slips, they would also need to use divine sense to investigate. Some important jade slips would have various restrictions placed in order to protect the things inside. For such jade slips with restrictions, it was often difficult to read the contents without meeting certain requirements. There were even more wonderful ones that required a certain kind of unique technique to open, and so on. There were all kinds of strange things. Tion had read about jade slips from the ancient books that cultivators carried with them. Naturally, he knew about them. It was impossible for half of the jade slips to survive the explosion just now. On the other hand, if it could survive, it meant that this jade slip was definitely not ordinary. He walked forward and quickly picked up the jade slip on the ground. Holding the jade slip in his hand, it was warm and round, giving people an unusually warm feeling. It was a good piece of jade. A thought emerged in his mind, but he immediately separated a trace of his demon sense and probed into the jade slip. He wanted to see what exactly was stored in the jade slip. This is Tion's face changed. As soon as his demon sense probed into the jade slip, he immediately felt that there seemed to be a strange space in the jade slip. On top of the jade slip were ancient seals that were constantly bobbing up and down, shining with traces of white light. As soon as his demon sense entered, these ancient seals immediately rushed into his mind as if they had a life of their own. Humph! He let out a muffled groan as a wave of information that didn't belong to him rushed into his mind. This information came too quickly, causing him to feel a sharp pain in his head. While he was in pain, this external information was quickly absorbed by him. Moreover, he instantly understood the meaning of the information. Who? After a while, Tion opened his eyes that were previously closed. Two strange lights burst out from his eyes. The color on his face also changed quickly, looking quite wonderful. There was no calmness and steadiness at all. It was as if he saw something that surprised him. Interesting, it's really interesting. No wonder those gods and Buddhas in my previous life liked to build temples and build golden bodies. It turns out that you can really get such incredible things. Tion came back to his senses. His eyes revealed a profound look. He muttered to himself, "It's a pity that this jade slip still has restrictions. I can only see a small part of it. Otherwise, when I see all of it, I should be able to know what the purpose of gathering these things is." Earlier, when he sent his demonic perception into the jade slip, he discovered that this jade slip was indeed not simple. It contained more than a single restriction. He could sense that these restrictions were extremely terrifying, far beyond what he could reach with his current strength. If he tried to force his way through, he might be struck by the power of the restriction and be turned into an idiot. This clearly proved that what he had just seen from a jade slip was only a part of all the information contained in the jade slip. Moreover, it should only be the most basic part. With his current ability, he could not see the real, precious part at all. This jade slip was definitely a good thing. Tion instantly defined it in his heart. After playing with it for a while, he quickly put it into the storage bag and walked back. However, he did not know that the reason why the blue-robed man wanted to escape was actually because of this jade slip. This jade slip was found by him and his brothers in an ancient cave abode. At that time, there were 2 foundation establishment elixirs placed together with the jade slip. It was these 2 foundation establishment elixirs that allowed them to become foundation establishment cultivators. That demon has already gone to chase after the consecrator. I wonder if he caught up with him and what happened if he caught up with him. If he comes back, what should I do? Will he kill me? It seems like he's a demon. If I stay here, I might be eaten by him. The brocade-robed young man squatted beside the lifeless, multicolored spirit tiger. He stared at the spirit tiger with sorrow and fear in his eyes. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind. For some reason, he did not have any thoughts of escaping immediately. He stroked the spirit tiger's head gently. This spirit tiger was a spirit beast that his father had specially spent a huge sum of money to buy for him on his 9th birthday. Back then, this spirit tiger was still very weak and was merely a spirit beast. Later on, he fed it with all sorts of elixirs without caring about the cost, and it transformed into a spirit beast with immense strength. It could be said that this spirit tiger had been with him for way too long. It had always been loyal to him, and there was an unbreakable bond between them. But now, it had died here in order to protect him. One could imagine the sorrow in his heart. To think that my good younger brother would be so courageous. To think that he would kill his elder brother for the sake of the throne. Could it be that there's truly no kinship in the royal family? Could it be that the bond between humans can't compare to that of a spirit beast? The brocade-robed young man revealed a vicious expression as he yelled internally, "Hua Qing, since you're heartless, don't blame me for being unjust." His eyes shone with a crazed look as though he had made up his mind. Thud! Heavy footsteps interrupted the brocade-robed young man's wild thoughts. He snapped out of his daze and looked in the direction of the footsteps. His eyes immediately shone with excitement and reverence. In front of him was a black-robed Tion, who had just returned. Of course, Tion had noticed the brocade-robed young man. However, after a quick glance, he did not pay much attention to him. He could tell at a glance that this was just an ordinary person. At most, he had practiced some martial arts and was roughly equivalent to a first-rate expert in the pugilistic world. He was not an immortal cultivator. Absorb. Walking to the center of the field, the purple royal tattoo on his forehead pulsed rapidly. Like a purple flame, it suddenly emitted a dazzling purple light that sprinkled down and covered the 3 dead cultivators. "Ah, you've already killed us. Let go of our souls. You can't do this." Within the purple light, 3 souls that were much more condensed than ordinary souls were forcibly pulled out of the corpses. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 143. These 3 souls looked exactly the same as the 3 corpses. Clearly, they were the souls of the 3 cultivators. When the souls were pulled out, the faces of the 3 souls revealed traces of terror. They looked at Tion and desperately begged for mercy. One must know that in the immortal cultivation world, it was not that there were no spells that targeted the soul, but they were quite rare. Moreover, there was an unwritten rule in the immortal cultivation world. In a battle, even if there were injuries, the opponent's soul could not be taken away viciously. At the very least, the opponent had to be given a chance to reincarnate. This was also a ray of hope in heaven and earth. Generally, cultivators would not violate this rule. After all, no one knew whether they would die at the hands of others tomorrow. If there was no such rule, after death, they would be completely destroyed. Not even their soul would be left behind. Then they would truly be unable to transcend forever. Moreover, even if one wanted to take away someone's soul, they would need to have the ability to do so. However, this monster in front of them could actually easily take their souls out of their bodies. It was clear that he definitely had a unique ability that targeted souls. How could they not panic? Each and every one of them bowed and begged in fear, hoping that he would let them go. This king is a monster. There is no need for me to talk about benevolence and righteousness with you cultivators. You killed my tiger clan, so I will take your lives and take your souls. Tion coldly spat out these words. The purple light that shot out from the king rune instantly turned into countless thin strands, tightly entangling the three souls and quickly pulling them towards the king rune. No matter how the three souls screamed, his face did not have the slightest trace of emotion. He forcibly pulled them into the king rune and threw them into the purple pool. When they entered the pool, there was naturally a mysterious purple energy that quickly corroded their bodies. Whoosh! After absorbing the souls, he opened his mouth again. A powerful devouring force was emitted from his mouth, sweeping up the three bodies in one go and swallowing them into his stomach. He took them into the demon refining cauldron, making them one of the many bodies in the cauldron. Soul-devouring body. Not a single soul or body was spared. This scene was simply that of an unparalleled, ferocious demon. However, all of this fell into the eyes of the young man in embroidered clothes. There was an unavoidable deep fear in the young man's eyes. He felt as if his heart was about to jump out of his throat. Demon, it was definitely a demon. Only a demon would have such ferocity. The young man in brocade roared in his heart. Looking at Sakura's gaze, there was all mixed with fear. Reverence was naturally because of his powerful strength. As for fear, it was because this poor child had been frightened by the scene of his soul being devoured. Swish! After Tion finished dealing with the corpses, he turned to look at the young man. The coldness in his eyes made the young man tremble. However, a trace of madness immediately appeared in his eyes. He suddenly stood up and rushed forward a few steps. He arrived in front of Tion and bent his knees. With a plop, he knelt heavily on the ground. He raised his head, and a look of incomparable desire appeared on his face. He cried out, "Senior, please accept me as your disciple. I will definitely serve you with all my heart." His eyes were filled with passion. Tion raised an eyebrow, and his face unconsciously twitched a few times. He coldly looked at the young man kneeling in front of him and said mockingly, "I am a demon and you are a human. You actually want to take a demon as your master? Don't you think it's absurd?" Although he said that he didn't kill the young man on the spot like he did with the other cultivators. Instead, a meaningful expression appeared on his face as he thought back to what he had obtained from the jade slip. Then he thought about how the cultivators had referred to this person as a prince. It was clear that this person's status in the mortal world was definitely not ordinary. I want to integrate into the secular world and learn the zither. As long as ordinary people don't provoke me, killing them won't do me much good. On the other hand, if what the jade slip said is true, then perhaps those ordinary people in the secular world will be of great use. Perhaps I should start with this person in front of me and enter the secular world. Tion's thoughts spun quickly. In just a moment, many ideas flashed through his mind. No, so what if I'm a demon? The young man in embroidered robes shouted excitedly. Senior was able to kill those 4 cultivators on the spot for the sake of your clansmen. From this, it can be seen that although Senior is a demon, you are also far more noble than most people. For the sake of the throne, my younger brother can ask a consecrated to kill me, his older brother. Why can't I take a demon as my master? As he spoke, his voice carried a trace of hysteria. He had already thought it through. Since his younger brother could ask a consecrated to kill him, it was clear that he had something that the consecrated was interested in. But he didn't. Now, if he could ask this powerful demon to help him, Not only would he be able to contend against his opponent, he would also be able to turn the situation around. Perhaps he would even be able to obtain great power. When Tion heard the young man say that he really was a prince, the light in his eyes deepened. He stared deeply at him and said, "I will never agree to take you as my master. You are a human and I am a demon. I can't accept a human as my disciple." However, at this point his tone suddenly changed and he said, "If you want me to help you, it's not impossible. Even if it's to help you ascend to the throne, it won't be difficult for me. However, you have to pay the price that I want." "What price?" Almost as soon as he finished speaking, the young man in embroidered clothes hurriedly asked, "You don't need to know what price you have to pay for now. When you ascend to the throne in the future, I will naturally tell you. Don't worry, when that time comes, what I want you to do will be very easy for you." Tion glanced at him. There was an inexplicable look in his eyes. "This." The young man in embroidered clothes' eyes flickered for a long time. Tion didn't disturb him and waited quietly for his decision. After a while, the young man in embroidered clothes finally gritted his teeth and nodded heavily. He said, "All right, I agree. As long as you are willing to help me, I will agree to anything. At the very least, I will definitely not let my good brother live a comfortable life." When he thought of being chased for 3 days and 3 nights, there was a deep hatred in his eyes. The corners of Tion's mouth curved into a faint smile. He walked past the young man and came to the front of the colorful spirit tiger. Looking at the miserable state the spirit tiger was in, a strong sense of resentment emanated from its body. There was a look of unwillingness in its eyes. Seeing this, a cold, murderous intent involuntarily emerged in its heart. "Immortal cultivator, I can feel your resentment towards cultivators. Don't worry, when I kill cultivators, I will take your share. Perhaps we can fight side by side." The death of the tiger tribe gave Tion a strong sense of empathy. He looked at the spirit tiger in front of him and said without a trace of emotion. The purple king mark on his forehead flashed and shot out rays of purple light that landed on the spirit tiger's body. Roar! Under the pull of the purple light, the spirit tiger's soul was suddenly pulled out. The moment the spirit tiger's soul came out, it let out a roar and its eyes fell on Tion. There was a hint of respect in its soul, and it knelt down and said, "King." In its soul, there was still a strong sense of resentment that couldn't be dissipated. In a race, the strong were the kings. Tion was much stronger than it. The aura of a king was so oppressive that it couldn't resist at all. Naturally, it recognized Tion as its king. Don't worry. I've already killed all the people who wanted to kill you. Do you have any wishes?" King has already avenged this subordinate. This subordinate is willing to follow King, and fight by King's side. The spirit tiger looked at Tion with a burning gaze and said without hesitation, Tion frowned slightly and looked at the spirit tiger's body. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. He walked up and reached out his right hand, placing it on the spirit tiger's head. His palm turned into a claw, and he grabbed the spirit tiger's head. At the same time, a surge of demon essence rushed into the spirit tiger's cold body and wrapped around the spine. Crack! He pulled it out forcefully. Instantly, a snow-white spine was pulled out of the spirit tiger's body. Bone marrow could be seen flowing in the spine, and it contained traces of demon energy. It was a full 2 meters long. Condense. After pulling out the spirit tiger's bone, Tion reached out and touched the huge spirit tiger's bone gently. Pure demon essence rushed into the bone and quickly refined the spirit tiger's bone. In the blink of an eye, the entire spirit tiger's bone became as clear as jade. At the side, the spirit tiger's eyes were filled with confusion when it saw its corpse being treated in such a manner. However, it did not resent Tion at all. "This is the spine bone in your body, and it has the most spiritual nature. I've tempered it a little, and your soul can enter this bone and temporarily reside in the tiger bone. Stay by my side, and in the future, you'll definitely be able to fight side by side with me. In this period of time, I'll collect the bones of the clan. When that time comes, I'll let everyone in the world know that the tiger clan will not be slaughtered by anyone. Tian looked at the spirit tiger's soul and said in a deep voice, "Yes, king." Hearing that, the spirit tiger's eyes burned with passion. Without hesitation, it pounced on the spirit tiger's bone in Tian's hand. Landing in front of the spirit tiger's bone, it turned into a ray of black light and entered the bone. After that, Tian opened his storage bag and kept the spirit tiger's bone and the rest of its body. The young man in embroidered robes watched from the side with a burning gaze. He was even more amazed by Tian's methods. Without saying much, he walked out of the forest after doing all that. Along the way, the young man in embroidered robes talked about himself and the situation outside. As it turned out, this person was called Hua Wenwu. He was the second prince of China and the successor to the throne of China. If there were no accidents, he would be the next emperor if the old emperor passed away. Above him, there was an elder sister. Below her, there was a younger brother. In fact, the reason why he was being hunted down this time was very simple. It was all for that supreme throne. Haha, I wish everyone a happy Dragon Boat Festival. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 144. As the saying went, there was no kinship in the royal family. Regardless of whether they were brothers or father and son, many times, for the sake of the throne, they would kill each other and turn against each other. All kinds of conspiracies were common. Often, a small palace could play out thousands of scenes, just like a small world. There were all kinds of conspiracies in it, and it could be described in 3 days and 3 nights. It was very common for Hua Wenwu to be hunted down by his younger brother Hua Qing to seize the opportunity to inherit the throne. In the royal family, such actions were definitely not rare. Along the way, Hua Wenwu saw that Tian was very interested in the secular scene outside, so he briefly told him the specific situation nearby. Last time in the Demon's Valley, but who was right? The countries in the east were indeed chaotic and killing each other constantly. Every once in a while, a country would be destroyed in such a massacre, and new countries would rise in the chaos. Such chaos had lasted for hundreds of years. Until now, only 3 countries still survived. They stood in a tripartite balance. They were China, Qi, and Zhou. Among the 3 countries, Hua Nation had the most developed economy and the strongest national strength. This was because Hua Nation had several local specialties that were popular in the surrounding areas and had driven the development of the entire nation. Therefore, Hua Nation was in the lead in terms of national strength. On the other hand, Qi Nation was known for its military and its people were tough. Moreover, the generals in the nation each had their own unique way of fighting. Therefore, its military could be said to be the best among the 3 countries. As for Zhou, it attached the most importance to agriculture. Moreover, its location had always been favorable and prosperous. Among the 3 countries, Zhou had the largest population. Therefore, each of the 3 countries had its own merits. No one could win against the other, and it was even more impossible for them to swallow the other country in one go. At this point, the 3 countries began a campaign that lasted for hundreds of years. At the border, there were constant small battles, and there were also big battles from time to time. Almost every year, there would be a big battle. Every time they fought, hundreds of thousands or even millions of soldiers would fight. On the battlefield, blood would flow like a river. For hundreds of years, if one casually grabbed a handful of soil under their feet, they would be able to see the red color and smell the faint scent of blood. Tens of millions of bones were buried under the ground. That battlefield was known as the Weeping Blood Wasteland. Putting aside those who lived in it, even those who walked past, it could feel the chilly breeze. Those with weak constitutions would probably fall ill after walking past it. It was truly a terrifying and ominous place. Patter, patter. Sakura silently walked forward as tall trees fell behind him. Looking at the top of his head, the sun was setting in the west, and the red sunset hung on the horizon. It was as if a big fire had burned the clouds red. Looking at it, there was a different kind of mood. Wenwu, do you have any great musicians in China who understand music and the art of the guqin? After listening to the overview of the current situation, Di Shirtian had a general understanding of the situation in the East, but he didn't care too much. After all, he didn't come here to fight, but to learn music and zither skills. His main purpose was to learn how to play the guqin. He guessed that Hua Wenwu was the Prince of China, so he must know a lot about music masters and masters in China. Even if he didn't know a lot about them, he should at least have a rough idea. In short, he must know a lot more than a stranger like him. Therefore, he asked to see if he could get any useful information. Mr. D, are you looking for a music master or a guqin master? In Hua Wenwu's tone, there was a trace of surprise. He knew Sakura's identity. He was from the demon clan. In the mouth of the immortal cultivators, demons had always been savage and brutal. As long as they saw a human, they would cruelly swallow them into their stomach and treat them as food. No matter what, it had nothing to do with elegance. Now that he suddenly heard him ask about music, he was almost shocked. Yes, Di Shirtian frowned slightly and naturally exuded a strong pressure. He said coldly, "You'd better not ask what you shouldn't ask." There was a hint of warning in his voice. Yes, yes. Hua Wenwu was shocked when he heard that. He quickly agreed. He didn't want to be estranged because of such a small matter. He didn't hesitate and said, "In China, there are music masters. Moreover, there is a family in China that has extremely high attainments in music. Every song they play is like the sound of nature. You can't buy a song even if you have 10,000 gold." As he spoke, his face naturally showed an intoxicated expression, as if he was recalling some wonderful scene. "Oh, there's such a family?" Di Shirtian's cold eyes suddenly emitted 2 rays of shocking light. He immediately began to pay attention. Hua Wenwu nodded vigorously, as if he was afraid Di Shirtian wouldn't believe him. He said, "Mr. D, it's true. You can ask around in China, and you will know that this junior is telling the truth. This family is called the Qin family, and it has been passed down for hundreds of years. Every generation of the Qin family is proficient in all kinds of musical instruments. I only heard it once during my father's birthday. At that time, the sound of the zither simply lingered in the beam for 3 days. There was no sound in the entire hall except for the sound of the zither. The sound of nature, it really is the sound of nature. Once you hear it once, you will never forget it for the rest of your life." There was a strong yearning in his expression. He sighed and said, "I heard that the eldest daughter of this generation of the Qin family, Miss Katomi, has extraordinary skills in the zither. It has reached an unimaginable level. When the sound of the zither is played, even butterflies will hear it and dance lightly. It's a pity that I have never had the chance to meet her." From his tone and expression, it was clear that he was very impressed by the Qin family. So there is such a thing. Di Shirtian's eyes flashed. He didn't care how high the Qin family's musical attainments were. What he cared about was whether he could learn what he wanted from them. He thought to himself, if the Qin family is really as he said, it seems like a good place to learn the art of the zither. "Mr. D, could it be that you have designs on the Qin family?" Hua Wenwu returned to his senses and carefully glanced at Di Shirtian. He said hesitantly, "My imperial father once told this junior that no matter what, the Qin family must not be touched. Otherwise, there will be a great disaster." When Di Shirtian heard this, he couldn't help but glance at him. He vaguely guessed that this was because he was worried that Di Shirtian would harm the Qin family. Of course, he couldn't deny that this might be the truth. The corner of his mouth curved as he said indifferently, "Don't worry. As long as they don't offend me, this king won't casually find trouble with ordinary people. You don't have to worry about the Qin family's matters. I will personally go and take a look." Although he said this, he could faintly hear a trace of unusual meaning in Hua Wenwu's words. He thought to himself, "Will there be a great disaster if I touch the Qin family?" These words came from the mouth of an emperor. To be able to make an emperor feel this way, could it be that the Qin family isn't an ordinary aristocratic family, but a cultivation aristocratic family? Otherwise, Would there be anything else that could threaten the imperial family apart from a group of cultivators who have transcended the secular world? All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind, but he didn't reveal any of them on his face. However, he was unconsciously curious about the Qin family. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to see what kind of existence the Qin family was. After asking Hua Wenwu, he learned that the Qin family's mountain villa was located in the imperial capital. In other words, the capital city. As he asked along the way, he unknowingly walked out of the forest and entered a small town. The name of the town was called Ping'an. The meaning behind this name was very straightforward. It was to hope that one could live here peacefully. Candied haws, selling candied haws. 2 copper coins per stick. Dog meat concocted with a secret ancestral recipe. It's definitely delicious. Come in and have a few bowls. Wood carvings, high-quality wood carvings on the spot. As soon as he entered the town, waves of shouts immediately sounded one after another. On the streets, crowds of 2s and 3s were constantly moving. It seemed very lively. Children were chasing each other and playing around. Laughter came from the eyes of these children. This kind of laughter was very sincere and made people feel very comfortable. Weeping willows by the river, boats in the lake. A gentle breeze blew past, causing ripples on the water. It was very pleasant. Looking at the scene in front of him, Tian felt that things were still the same, but people had changed. Waves of emotions faintly appeared in his heart, but he felt that it was difficult to blend in with this lively crowd. It was out of place. Yes, I was a human in my previous life, but I'm already a demon in this life. The demon race is my race. Tian sighed softly in his heart. He shook his head and didn't think too much about it. So what if he was a human? So what if he was a demon? They were all living creatures in the world. Humans had the right to live, but so did demons. Mr. D, I've been to this town before. I know there's an inn in the town. Looking at the sky now, why don't we rest in the inn for the night and have something to eat? Tomorrow morning, we'll hire a carriage and rush to the capital. Hua Wenwu looked at the endless stream of people in front of him, and his eyes couldn't help but show a kind of expression as if a lifetime had passed. For him, this was simply a narrow escape from death. That's good. I also plan to try the delicious food in the secular world. Tian nodded and replied. Speaking of which, he really did miss the various delicacies he had eaten in the past. Most importantly, inns and restaurants were places where people of all trades and professions were the most well-informed. If he went in and sat down, he might be able to hear a lot of different information. All of these could enrich his understanding of the secular world. Haha, if Mr. D wants to eat, when we return to the capital, I'll ask the imperial chef in the palace to cook for you. You can eat whatever you want. Hua Wenwu's eyes flashed when he heard this. He had already remembered this point in his heart. As he spoke, he led the way in front. Shuttling through the crowd, it didn't take long for them to arrive in front of a 3-story inn. The inn took the name of the town, Peace Inn. Haha, a big shot is about to appear. To be continued. If you want to know the future, go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 145. This inn was built very cleverly. It was divided into a front yard and a backyard. The front yard had 3 floors, all of which were restaurants for guests to eat and drink. The backyard had 4 floors, which were used for accommodation. It was an inn for guests to stay in. Food and accommodation were all available here. It had to be said that the manager of this inn had a good business sense. After all, in ancient times, restaurants were restaurants, and inns were inns. Even if an inn provided food, it would never be like a restaurant where they could make all kinds of signature dishes. Tian was secretly shocked by what he saw. When they entered the inn, a quick-witted waiter at the door immediately came forward and said with a smile, "Dear guests, would you like to have a meal or have a snack? Not only does our inn have the best rooms, our signature dishes, drunken chicken and spiced chicken, are the best within 100 miles. Our clear spring wine is good for all the customers who come and go. I guarantee that you will definitely be satisfied." The waiter looked at the two of them. Di Shirtian was in a black robe, full of majesty. Hua Wenwu was even more so. He was born in the royal family, so his temperament naturally had a kind of nobility. The brocade clothes he wore were of the best quality. Seeing this, the waiter's eyes became brighter and more enthusiastic. Hua Wenwu naturally answered this kind of question. He nodded and said in a deep voice, "Let's eat and have a snack together. Book 2 rooms for us. Also, bring me all your signature dishes, anything delicious, anything good to drink." As he spoke, a silver ingot weighing 10 taels appeared in his hand. He casually threw it into the waiter's hand. "Okay, dear guests, please go to the 3rd floor." The waiter took the silver ingot and weighed it in his hand. The smile on his face became even brighter. Dong, dong, dong. He led the way all the way to the 3rd floor. In the inn, business was really good. More than half of the tables were full. All kinds of voices interweaved into a rather chaotic sound system in the inn. Laughter and laughter could be heard from here. Big mouthfuls of meat and big mouthfuls of wine. Many of them were equipped with swords and sabers. When he arrived at the 3rd floor, he found a seat near the window and sat down. Soon, the waiter served up the various signature dishes of the inn one by one. Moreover, he served up a jar of the clear spring wine that he mentioned earlier. After removing the mud seal on the wine jar, a fresh and unique wine aroma wafted out of the jar. After tasting it a little, he found that this wine was indeed more fragrant than the Moutai he had drunk in his previous life. As for the food and wine, he had been eating them raw ever since he came to this world. Now that he was eating them, he felt a different kind of taste. "I am unwilling to return to the boundless secular world. This heart should be drunk in the wine, gradually moving deeper and deeper, following the heart, in exchange for 100 desires that entangle the body in sleep." While eating and drinking, Di Shirtian couldn't help but sigh inwardly. No wonder people say that the secular world is a huge dye vat. Once you enter it, it's very difficult to escape. It's not that it's impossible, but that you don't want to. Who can forsake the 7 emotions and 6 desires? While he was quietly eating and drinking, no one noticed that in the surroundings, there were wisps of black gas drilling into Di Shirtian's body. This black gas couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Ordinary people couldn't even feel it. It was all the power of desire that filled the heavens and earth. Ever since the 7 sins demonic zither was refined, it would naturally attract the surrounding power of desire and quickly devour it, whether it was on the outside or inside the body. Then it would become the power of the demonic zither itself. As long as it was nearby, any power of desire would naturally be attracted. There was no need for him to control it. While eating, Sakra's ears pricked up as he carefully listened to all kinds of discussions in the restaurant. Among these discussions, there were some trivial matters in the vicinity, such as the Zhang family losing their dog, the Li family losing their cow, and so on, but he didn't pay attention to them. Suddenly, a conversation entered his ears. "Big brother, do you think the news from the imperial capital is true? Could it be that the Qin family's zither fairy Katomi is really looking for a groom?" This sentence immediately attracted Di Shirtian's attention, and his gaze instantly swept towards the direction of the voice. With this look, his body couldn't help but tremble slightly. On the other side of the 3rd floor, at a table, there were 2 young men sitting. These 2 young men had an aura that ordinary people didn't have, as if they were superior. It was a feeling that they were a level higher than ordinary people. They were 2 immortal cultivators. Di Shirtian couldn't help but raise his eyebrows slightly, and a trace of indifference appeared in his eyes. With a glance, he could tell that the cultivation of these 2 immortal cultivators wasn't high, probably at the middle stage of qi refinement. Such cultivators weren't in his eyes, and if he wanted to kill them, he could kill them with a single hand. However, this was the secular world after all, and he didn't want to expose his identity just because he killed a few cultivators. That would go against his purpose of entering the secular world. Moreover, the 2's conversation also attracted his attention. Katomi of the Qin family, in their mouth, actually called zither fairy. It seems that this Qin family really isn't an ordinary family, but a cultivator family at the edge of the secular world and the immortal cultivation world. Also, Katomi is actually looking for a groom, a woman from a cultivator family looking for a groom. This is a bit interesting. Shirtian's eyes flashed with a few traces of light. From this one sentence, he had already analyzed many things. At the very least, he could confirm that the Qin family was definitely a cultivator family. From Hua Wenwu's description, he already had a faint impression of this Katomi. After all, to be able to use zither music to summon butterflies to dance, it was indeed a bit strange. And now, this groom's search made him even more interested. He listened attentively. How could this be wrong? Right now, whether it's China, Qi, or Zhou, many cultivator families and many row cultivators have already received the news and started to rush to the imperial capital. I have to say, this zither fairy, I heard that she is a national beauty with a world-toppling appearance. However, she always wears a veil, so outsiders have never seen her before and don't know if it's true or not. The older cultivator, who was wearing a green robe, lightly sighed and clicked his tongue. His face was full of yearning. Right, big brother, what is going on with this groom search? I have to say, with Zither Fairy's identity, as long as she opens her mouth, all the young elites will be at her disposal. Isn't this a bit strange? The younger cultivator curiously asked while pouring a cup of wine into his mouth. Huh. The green-robed cultivator also drank the wine in front of him and said, You don't know about this, but I heard that Zither Fairy's groom search is not ordinary. What's not ordinary about it? After hearing this, Shirtian also became spirited, knowing that this might be a very important matter. A glint flashed across his eyes as he focused and listened attentively. On the side, Hua Wenwu didn't have the same cultivation as Shirtian, so he couldn't hear the conversation. However, after seeing Shirtian's appearance, he knew that he was probably listening to something and tactfully didn't disturb him. Rumor has it that there is a forbidden ground in the back mountain of the Zither clan. This forbidden ground is where the ancestors of the Zither clan cultivate in seclusion. In the depths of this forbidden ground, there is a Zither realm. It is extremely dangerous inside, and many ancestors of the Zither clan have fallen there. This time, the Zither clan's groom search test is to find a verdant Zither in the Zither realm. The one who can find it can become the Zither Fairy's Tao partner. The green-robed cultivator proudly said. He didn't easily find out about this matter. Verdant Zither? When the other cultivator heard this, he was shocked and said, Could it be the life treasure of the legendary ancestor who founded the Qin clan? I heard that it has already reached the level of a life treasure. With one song, it caused tens of thousands of cultivators to be immersed in the illusion of the Zither music, unable to extricate themselves. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. He seemed to have thought of a terrifying legend. That's right, it is that Zither. The green-robed cultivator nodded and said excitedly, After this news spread, who knows how many young cultivators are rushing to the Zither clan right now. If they can really take out the verdant Zither and become Tao partners with the Zither Fairy, then they will have a powerful backer in the future. Unfortunately, the verdant Zither is a bloodline natal treasure. No one can use it outside of the Zither clan's bloodline. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go to the capital and join in the fun. The two cultivators didn't say much. Soon, they changed the topic and ate while talking about other things. However, the speed at which they ate and drank was clearly much faster than when they first came. Zither Fairy? Zither Clan? Zither Realm. It seems like something interesting is about to happen. After hearing this, Shirtian couldn't help but reveal a thoughtful expression. What he had just heard gave him enough information. However, he was sure that his interest in the Zither clan had increased. He thought to himself, It seems that the Zither clan was a rather powerful cultivation family in the past. Moreover, it seems that the Zither clan's cultivation direction is sound attacks. After such a long time, there must be something unique about sound attacks. The Zither clan? I have to go. Wenwu, do you know the location of the Zither clan manor? Shirtian looked at Hua Wenwu and asked, The Zither clan manor? Of course I do. Hua Wenwu was stunned for a moment, but immediately replied, "Since Mr. D is interested in the Zither clan, this junior will personally take you there when we reach the capital." Speaking of which, the Zither clan's location is really hard to find. The purple bamboo forest they are in is one of the best in China. All right then, we'll talk about this when we reach the capital. We'll set off tomorrow. After saying that, he reached out with his chopsticks again and waved them continuously in front of him. Most of the wine and dishes went into his stomach. After eating, he asked the waiter to bring 100 jars of clear spring wine to his room. When he returned to his room, he opened his storage bag and instantly filled it up. As for the money, it was naturally paid by Hua Wenwu. The next morning, he hired a carriage and quickly rushed to the capital. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 146. After finding out about the Qin family, they did not look at the scenery along the way, nor did they enjoy the bustling scene of the mortal world. They rushed to the imperial capital wholeheartedly. Di Shurtian stayed in the carriage and meditated with his eyes closed. He allowed the 7 sins demonic zither in his body to devour the power of desire around him. At the same time, he was secretly using his cultivation method to move his demonic essence, allowing it to circulate through his meridians. As he circulated, he would occasionally split off some demonic essence and integrate it into his demonic body. When it came to the power of desire, the moment they entered a place where humans lived, the power of desire in the world was many times stronger than when they were in the forest. After the carriage passed, the power of desire behind it was absorbed into the body of the zither. It was empty for a short period of time, but not long after, it was filled with the power of desire around it again. The power of desire was almost endless. It was something that ordinary people could not detect. With the help of the 7 sins demonic zither, one could feel the boundless power of desire that filled the world. Sakura had been pondering over a question. Desire was emitted by all living beings with wisdom and spiritual intelligence in the world. With thoughts, there would be desire. Therefore, in this world, in addition to the spiritual chi of the world that cultivators could feel, it was also filled with almost endless power of desire. All living beings were the source of the power of desire. Therefore, as long as there were living beings in this world, the power of desire would never be exhausted. The 7 sins demonic zither can absorb the power of desire in the world through the infinite refining formation of 7 emotions and 6 desires to strengthen the power of the demonic zither and continue to evolve. If I can find a way to absorb the power of desire in heaven and earth to enhance my own cultivation, then wouldn't I be able to open up another shortcut? In this heaven and earth, the power of desire is many times stronger than spirit chi. If I can absorb it, then my cultivation speed will definitely rise to another level. Maybe I can use it to peek into a supreme, secret realm in one go and obtain great magical powers. That's right. Sakura was aiming for the power of desire. However, the power of desire could not be absorbed by him at all. Even if it was absorbed into his body, it could not be transformed into power that he could use. The 7 sins demonic zither could absorb it because of the 7 emotions and 6 desires infinite refining array. Could it be that he had to make such an array on his own body? He immediately rejected it in his heart. That was obviously unrealistic. It was precisely because of this difficulty that Di Shurtian's pride was aroused. He did not shrink back because of this at all. He was constantly thinking about how he could use the power of desire to cultivate, create a new cultivation technique specifically to absorb the power of desire. As soon as this thought appeared, he couldn't help but bitterly smile. Creating a cultivation method, one didn't have enough cultivation experience and knowledge, and also had to be lucky. Otherwise, how could it be so easy to create a cultivation method? Time slowly passed as Di Shurtian silently circulated his cultivation technique and pondered the problem. Along the way, they passed by several ancient cities, but they did not stop for too long. They only ate a little before continuing on their way. It wasn't that Tion didn't want to rely on the imperial wind technique to fly forward. It was just that once he used the imperial wind technique, demonic chi would surge. If a dense demonic chi were to appear here, it would cause a lot of trouble before they even reached the imperial capital. They could only rely on carriages to travel day and night. Finally, on the 9th day, the carriage arrived at the gates of the imperial capital. Gotcha! The carriage stopped near the gates. With a crisp sound, the carriage door was opened. Hua Wenwu was the first to come down from the carriage. He stood on the ground and said, "Mr. D, you can come down now. We've arrived at the imperial capital." As he spoke, he scanned the imperial capital. He looked at the 3 large ancient seal words "Capital City" on the imperial capital. A complicated expression appeared in his eyes. This is the imperial capital? It's indeed much bigger than the average ancient city. Sakura walked out of the carriage as a cool breeze blew over, causing his sleeves to flutter incessantly. His eyes indifferently looked at the ancient city in front of him, and with a single glance, he couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. Big, so big. Majestic vicissitudes and thick traces of time. One by one, they appeared in his mind. It was the first time he had seen such a big ancient city. It was several times bigger than the average ancient city. Moreover, on the city walls made of large black stones, there were deep marks of swords and weapons. Under the morning light of Chun-Shi, the black city walls were suffused with a dark red luster. That was the sign of blood that had seeped into the city walls. Obviously, this ancient city had existed for a long time. Mr. D, this is the capital city of the imperial capital in China. The next time we enter the city, Wenwu will definitely show you around. Hua Wenwu's tone was very respectful. After all, he had returned to the imperial capital and was relying on Tion to fight for the throne. There was no reason for him not to be respectful. These days, he had been trying his best to get closer to him. Sometimes, an idea would appear in his mind. Seeing how Mr. D is so interested in news about Miss Katomi, he might want a beauty. If I introduce my sister to Mr. D, will he? Oh, you mean we don't need to enter the city? Tion raised his eyebrows. The purple king pattern on his forehead flickered slightly, and a strong pressure was immediately emitted from his body. The surrounding air seemed to become somewhat oppressive at this moment. From his words, he immediately understood the meaning behind them. If he didn't even have this ability, his experience in his previous life would have been in vain. Hua Wenwu nodded and said, "Mr. D really knows everything." After a small compliment, he continued, "Mr. D, you want to go to the Qin family. However, although the Qin family is in the imperial capital, it is not in the imperial capital. It is in the purple bamboo forest outside the imperial capital. Therefore, if you want to go to the Qin family, you can only enter the imperial capital later." "I see." A light flashed in Di Shurqian's eyes. He suddenly looked at the differently colored bags on the people's waists and said in a low voice, "I think I have a way to find the Qin family. I don't need you to lead the way. You can go back to the imperial capital first. When I'm done with my business, I will naturally make a trip to the imperial capital. When the time comes, I will look for you." This, Hua Wenwu's expression couldn't help but be slightly stunned. After some thought, he said respectfully, "Since Mr. D says so, this junior can only obey. However, my father's health has always been poor. I hope Mr. D can enter the city as soon as possible. When the time comes, this junior will arrange for people in front of the city gates. As long as Mr. D enters the city, someone will arrange for you. Don't worry, since I promised to help you, this king won't go back on his word. Besides, I also need your help to do something for me." Tion looked at him meaningfully. How could he not understand the meaning behind his words? After he finished speaking, he no longer paid any attention to him. With a wave of his sleeve, he glanced at the people who were obviously cultivators. When he saw them walking towards the forest in the south, he immediately followed them into the forest in the south. The only thing that can attract these cultivators in the imperial capital is the Qin family's matchmaking convention. Hua Wenwu said that the Qin family is outside the imperial capital. If I follow these cultivators, I will definitely be able to reach the purple bamboo forest where the Qin family is located. Before Sakura left the Myriad Demon Valley, White Fox had taught him a set of special breath concealment secret method called Spirit Snake Breath Concealment Technique. It was the foundation of the snake that needed to hibernate in winter. All the energy of the whole body was converged in the body, not revealing the slightest bit, to support the whole winter. During this process, very few animals could find the hibernating snake. Therefore, the Spirit Snake Aura Return Technique was a profound aura-concealing secret technique that was specifically used to restrain one's demonic aura. Normally, when he entered the secular world, as long as he relied on the secret technique and didn't use his full demonic aura, even core formation cultivators would find it difficult to discover his identity. This was also the reason why Di Shirtian was confident that he wouldn't be discovered if he encountered cultivators. They followed along the way. Along the way, young cultivators either traveled alone or in groups of 2 or 3. All of them were heading in the same direction, so it was unlikely that they would get lost. However, when these cultivators encountered each other, their eyes faintly carried a kind of vigilance. It seems that these people are all people who came to participate in the Qin family's matchmaking convention. It seems that the Qin family will become very lively this time. Di Shirtian thought to himself. As he walked forward, he passed through the plants at an extremely fast speed. After passing through several large mountains in succession, suddenly, the scenery in front of him changed. What a big valley, what a big purple bamboo forest. There really is a world inside. Di Shirtian couldn't help but secretly exclaim. He followed behind those cultivators, and after passing through several mountains, a huge valley appeared in front of him. The valley was quite large, almost half the size of the Myriad Demon Valley. The first thing that entered his eyes was the purple bamboo forest in the valley. The bamboo in the purple bamboo forest wasn't thick, but it was just right to use it as a flute. Every single one of them fluttered in the wind and was distributed in the valley. However, looking at their distribution, it seemed that there was something special about it. At this time, there were no less than a few hundred young cultivators gathered in the open space in the valley. These cultivators weren't idle in the valley. Many of them directly took out a piece of bee skin, spread it on the ground, and placed talismans and pills on it. Damn it, they directly set up stalls to do business. Like this, there were quite a few people lingering around these stalls. At the same time, there were all kinds of conversations. However, they were talking a lot softly, as if they were afraid of disturbing something. Interesting, Di Shirtian murmured with an arc at the corner of his mouth. Hee, little brother, what do you think? If this old man didn't see wrong, you must have come for the Qin family's Zither Fairy, right? Do you want to know about the Qin family's Zither Fairy? Come, let's talk over here. At this moment, as soon as Di Shirtian entered the valley, an old Taoist priest with a smile suddenly appeared beside him, grabbed his hand, and was about to lead him to the side. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 147. No matter what you want to know, this old man will be able to answer it for you. In the immortal cultivation world, I know 90% of what the heavens know and 70% of what the earth knows. There's nothing on the continent that I don't know. My reputation as a know-it-all is not undeserved. If you want to know anything about the Qin clan, ask me, and I guarantee that I won't be wrong. While this old man was pulling Di Shirtian, his mouth didn't stop as he chattered nonstop. When he talked about inquiring about things, he was very proud of himself. When Sakura's arm was grabbed by the old man, he instinctively wanted to struggle free. However, when he heard the old man's confident words, he couldn't help but pause. He didn't resist and followed the old man to a corner of the purple bamboo forest. The old man found a large rock, squatted his butt, and directly sat down on the rock. You're a know-it-all? 90% of what the heavens know and 70% of what the earth knows. A strange look flashed across D. Shirtian's eyes. He looked indifferently at the old man who had suddenly appeared in front of him. He carefully sized the old man up. After sizing him up, this old man really had some special features. He had a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks. He was only 6 meters tall and could be considered rather short. When he stretched out his arm, there wasn't any flesh on it. It was as thin as firewood. He looked like an ordinary person who was about to die. If it wasn't for the fact that his eyes were very spirited and his body didn't have the look of a dying person, D. Shirtian would have thought that he was an ordinary person. He was wearing a white Taoist robe and had a smile on his face. He seemed to have a cynical spirit. I guarantee it. I'm not bragging, but there are many things that I don't know in the purple gold continent. If you want to know, I can tell you everything. However, the know-it-all chuckled. A crafty look flashed across his eyes. He said with a smile, "You also know that it wasn't easy for me to get the information. You have to know that you have to pay a fee first." D. Shirtian raised his eyebrows. After saying so much, all of his words were focused on this last sentence. "Oh, what's the fee? Moreover, how do I know whether your information is true or false? If you use false information to fool me, then wouldn't I be at a disadvantage?" His expression was indifferent as he glanced at the know-it-all's face and spoke in a deep voice. Although he said that, he couldn't help but be curious about this person. He thought to himself, "All-nighter. If it's true, then I might be able to get some important information from him." TSK, little brother, you're wrong. As long as you can afford it, I'll give you the information you want. I'm a jack of all trades, and I've always been honest with you. Even if you want to ask if the moon god in the moon palace misses her lover, and who her lover is, I could tell you everything. The know-it-all expert's spittle flew all over the place. When he got to the part where he got excited, his hands and feet danced, and his eyebrows danced with exultation. He appeared to be quite excited. However, halfway through his speech, an almond that came out of nowhere suddenly smashed into his head. He quickly covered his head and cried out in pain. The words that were originally flying down the river suddenly stopped. He subconsciously raised his eyes and glanced above his head. In short, I can tell you whatever you want to know. Of course, the price isn't low either. The value of the information will also be different. For example, if you want to know about the zither fairy of the zither family, it's not expensive. You just have to give me 100-year-old spirit herb or 1,000 spirit stones. How about it? Are you interested in listening? I think you're pleasing to the eye. After I finish, I'll give you a portrait of the zither fairy." The know-it-all chuckled as he spoke. In D. Shirtian's eyes, why did that look so wretched? "I'm not in a hurry to know about the zither fairy. If you really are all-nighter, then I want to ask you if you know the whereabouts of the purple gold jade silkworm. Do you know where I can find the purple gold divine iron? Where can I find the heavenly fortune jade?" D. Shirtian smiled indifferently. He suddenly opened his mouth and bombarded the know-it-all with 3 questions in a row. After he finished speaking, his 2 eyes stared unblinkingly at him, not missing the slightest change. Good fellow, little brother, you can really ask." When the know-it-all heard these 3 questions, he almost jumped up from the rock. He pointed at D. Shirtian in surprise. His 2 eyes swept up and down his body as if he was suddenly interested. "Looks like you don't know." D. Shirtian saw this and calmly spat out a sentence. The know-it-all heard this and laughed strangely. He said, "Little brother, you don't need to provoke me. It's not that I don't know the 3 questions you want to ask. It's just that you can't afford that price." He clicked his tongue and exclaimed with interest, "The questions you're asking aren't what ordinary people would ask. The purple gold jade silkworm is a sacred item among silkworms. The purple gold jade silkworm's silk is a priceless treasure. Any strand can cause a bloody storm on the continent. If its whereabouts were known, the entire continent would probably tremble a few times. As for the purple gold divine iron, good fellow, you really dare to say that. This is the supreme divine iron that can only be condensed from the essence of the purple gold divine sand after thousands of years of incubation. Any piece of it is a supreme treasure. As for the heavenly fortune jade, TSK, that is a sacred item that can only be found by chance. It's a treasure. He exclaimed a few more times and said, "If you want to know about such a treasure, you won't be able to afford it even if you sell yourself. Little brother, in my opinion, you'd better ask something else." When Tion heard this, a few rays of light flashed in his eyes. His expression immediately became serious. The way he looked at the know-it-all suddenly changed. After a while, he said in a deep voice, "If I must know, I don't know what kind of price I'll have to pay." He faintly guessed that the know-it-all in front of him might really be an extraordinary person. It should be known that the purple gold jade silkworm, he only knew of this name from the ancient scroll. As for the purple gold divine iron and the heavenly fortune jade, he only knew of them a few days ago. However, he didn't know that they were actually so precious and could be called treasures. To be able to say these things, it was obvious that this know-it-all didn't have an undeserved reputation as he appeared on the surface. I already said that you can't afford the price I want. Can you afford the 10,000-year-old monkey wine? Do you have the peach of immortality? Do you have a branch from the world tree? As for the rest, there's no need to talk about it. The know-it-all shook his head and looked at Tion playfully. It was as if he could see through him and knew that he definitely couldn't afford such a price. Tion immediately frowned. He only knew about the monkey wine. However, it was impossible for him to have the 10,000-year-old monkey wine. As for the rest, he was even more disdainful. He couldn't take out any of them. Ding dong, ding dong, ding ding dong. At this moment, in the depths of the bamboo forest, there was a villa constructed from violet bamboo. There was a plaque hanging on the villa, and shockingly, the words Qin Clan Villa were written in ancient seal script. The words were written in flamboyant calligraphy, and they drew out a different kind of charm. It caused one to be able to feel the extraordinarily different aspects of it. In the backyard of the villa, a lotus pavilion stood in the middle of a lake. On the lake, lotuses were in full bloom. Bursts of fragrance filled the air with the wind. Two women were sitting in the pavilion. One of them looked to be about 30 years old. She had the unique charm of a young married woman. She looked very attractive. Her charm was definitely not below that of those peerless beauties. Moreover, she naturally exuded an air of elegance. It added to her temperament. As for the other one, it was a young girl with a veil covering her face. This young girl was wearing a white court lady's robe. She wore it very well, outlining her perfect figure. She had a pair of towering peaks, pitch black hair, and slender fingers that were as white as jade. She looked exceptionally perfect. Although her face couldn't be seen clearly because of the veil, one could guess that she was definitely not ordinary from her figure. At least, she wouldn't be ugly. Traces of elegance naturally exuded from her body. The young girl was sitting in the pavilion with a green 7-string zither on the jade table in front of her. Her slender fingers were placed on the zither strings, sometimes light, sometimes heavy, sometimes fast, and sometimes slow. As the strings vibrated, the sounds of the zither connected together to form a heavenly melody. In the lake, the crucian carps floated to the surface of the water one by one. It was very magical. The zither was the voice of the heart. However, there seemed to be a faint melancholy in this zither. It made the listener unconsciously feel depressed and secretly think of a troublesome matter. Their mood naturally changed with the rise and fall of the zither music. Ding! The zither music stopped. Xian, isn't your decision too hasty? This matter concerns your lifelong happiness. In Mother's opinion, why don't you think about it more? Anyway, it's not too late. You can't pay such a big price for the Qin family. The beautiful woman sighed softly and looked at the young girl, persuading her. Mother! The young girl looked up and said softly, "You don't have to persuade me. No one forced me. I'm doing this willingly. The supreme cultivation technique of our Qin clan is hidden within the verdant zither. If we obtain the verdant zither, we'll be able to revitalize our Qin clan and help the clan escape the impending calamity. Otherwise, with the current strength of our Qin clan, we'll probably be destroyed." As the young girl spoke, she looked at the lotus in the lake and smiled faintly. Moreover, if someone can obtain the verdant zither from the zither realm, it means that that person will be a dragon among men. I won't be wronged. Perhaps my fate should be decided by the Ancestor's relic. So I hope so. The beautiful woman shook her head slightly. He knew that once she had made up her mind, it would be hard to change it. He only said, "Right now, there are already many young cultivators rushing over from the valley. By the looks of it, the number of people will reach at least 1,000 by the time the convention begins." However, the Guqin realm was dangerous. It was easy to enter, but difficult to exit. I wonder how many people will survive. In the valley, there would be a large number of cultivators arriving every day. These cultivators were all young cultivators, and they all looked no older than 40. After all, cultivators had a much longer lifespan than ordinary people. Those in their 40s were considered young. As for those in their 40s, they were not included in this marriage. Therefore, it could be said that very few people came. Also, many thanks to CS St. Yun for the 588 tipping. Many thanks to those who tipped and voted for me every month. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 148. Otherwise, if all the rogue cultivators and cultivator families in the 3 eastern countries came together, they would attract tens of thousands of people. Even so, the majority of the young cultivators who had entered the valley were at the chi condensation stage, but there was no lack of foundation establishment cultivators. There were also some older cultivators who had come to watch the fun. Some of them wanted to take advantage of this event to set up stalls and sell some of the things they didn't need in order to buy some of the things they wanted in the future. There was no lack of people with all kinds of purposes. At this time, in the spacious area of the valley, there were many stalls. They were arranged in 2 vertical rows, with a path in the middle and goods on both sides. It was like a straight street. However, although these cultivators had set up stalls, they didn't shout loudly like the hawkers in the secular world. They all sat in front of their own stalls. If someone came to the stall and had the intention to buy, they would open their mouths to bargain. After all, each and every one of the cultivators believed that their status was a level higher than that of ordinary people. How could they be like the vulgar people in the marketplace? 10,000-year monkey wine, peaches of immortality, branches of the world tree? When Di Shirtian heard the prices from Know-It-All, his heart couldn't help but surge with waves of shock. He shook his head and pondered for a moment. Then he looked up at Know-It-All, who was sitting in front of him with a smile on his face, and said in a low voice, "I don't have any of these things. However, if one day I can find them, how can I find you?" Among these few things, he could guess that each of them was a treasure that could only be found by chance. Peaches of immortality, he naturally didn't think that they were ordinary peaches. Maybe they were the peaches in the immortal peach garden of the heavenly Queen Mother in the myths of his previous life. There was also the world tree, which was a strange tree that he had never heard of. Just by hearing the name, he could figure out that it was an existence that ordinary cultivators couldn't reach. However, he also secretly made up his mind. Although he couldn't get these things now, it didn't mean that he couldn't get them in the future. If he could get them, then he would be able to get the information of what he was looking for. He could vaguely tell that this know-it-all might really be an eccentric person who played around in the world of mortals. Upon hearing Di Shirtian's words, the know-it-all king looked at his face with great interest. His eyes rolled around, and he said with a smile, "Although this old man doesn't believe that you can obtain such a treasure, 500 years later, the origin of all worlds will open once every 10,000 years. If you can go in, you may have a chance to obtain one of them." Forget it. Here's a purple copper coin. It's my token. If you really find the thing I'm talking about, you just have to inject a strand of energy into the copper coin, and I'll know. When the time comes, I'll naturally look for you. Here. After the know-it-all king finished speaking, he casually threw out a purple copper coin. It immediately came to Di Shirtian with a purple light. He reached out and caught the copper coin in his hand. Before he could take a closer look, the know-it-all king jumped down from the stone and shouted, "Well, kid, you don't look like someone who wants to buy information of the Zither fairy. This old man won't waste time on you. I'll go find other fat sheep He rubbed his palms hard, and his eyes lit up as he looked at a group of people who had just entered the valley. The leader of the group was a handsome man in a snow-white robe. He had a graceful bearing. He held a simple folding fan in his hand. When the fan opened, there were pictures of mountains and rivers on it. The surface exuded a faint spiritual energy. It wasn't made of paper, but was woven with strands of silk. Obviously, this fan wasn't an ordinary paper fan. It was a magic item or treasure in the hands of a cultivator. Behind her were 4 maids. These maids were actually twins. They were around 17 or 18 years old, and all of them were extremely beautiful and alluring. They were respectively dressed in red, yellow, blue, and green. What was worth noting was that they all had a golden bell on their wrists. When they waved it, it gave off a clear and melodious sound. Moreover, the 4 women's eyes were always on the young man in front of them. It was as if there was no one else in their eyes other than him. Many of the young men in the valley looked at them with envy. The know-it-all king eagerly rushed in front of the young man. Saliva flew out of his mouth as he chatted with the young man. It seemed that the young man's interest was also piqued. Tion glanced at it, and a strange expression appeared on his face. He lowered his head to look at the copper coin in his hand. The copper coin was purple gold in color. He pinched it and found that it was very hard. He didn't know what it was made of. On one side of the copper coin, there was a picture of a tree with many immortal peaches on it. It looked very lifelike. On the other side, there were 4 ancient seals, all ancient knowledge. What big words! Sakura couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The meaning of the ancient words on the copper coin was so big that it could be said about the matters of the ancient times. Such words could be said by a know-it-all. Such a person, if he wasn't an idiot, then he was a true divine ability expert, a mutant. He carefully looked at the know-it-all king again and carefully put away the purple gold copper coin. The space in the bag of holding is really too small. It would be nice if I had a bigger storage treasure. Cosmos bags, storage rings, storage bracelets. These are all of a higher level than the bag of holding. I wonder if I can find them in the stalls in the valley. Glancing at the storage pouch on his waist, he couldn't help but have the thought of obtaining a higher grade storage magic treasure. After obtaining those hundreds of storage pouches, although each storage pouch didn't contain many items, when all of them were added together, it wasn't something that could be stored in just 1 or 2 storage pouches. Now, he felt that the bag of holding was quite unsafe and inconvenient. He heard that the space in the storage ring was not only larger, but when worn on the hand, it could hide its shape and not be easily seen by others. Unfortunately, such a treasure wasn't something that ordinary cultivators could get their hands on. It would take a few more days for the matchmaking convention to begin. He glanced at the group of people who had set up the stalls in the valley and quickly walked toward the small market. After entering the small market square, he carefully looked at the items placed on the street stalls. There were all kinds of beast bones, all of which emitted faint fluctuations. They weren't ordinary beast bones. Some were selling spirit talismans, but their quality wasn't very high. There were also stalls selling materials, spirit brushes for drawing talismans, spirit blood cinnabar, spirit beast hides, and all kinds of unique talisman papers made from ancient trees with spiritual nature. There were also stalls selling magic tools, medicinal pills, ancient books, and a few jade slips placed in front of them. Obviously, the jade slips might contain all kinds of cultivation methods. There were also all kinds of strange items. As long as they were unusual, they could be sold. Along the way, Tion couldn't help but sigh inwardly. This was the first time he had seen such a thing. Step by step, he walked back and forth in the market. Then, he suddenly stopped in front of a stall. The owner of this stall was a 17 or 18-year-old girl who was only at the middle chi refining stage. She was delicate and pretty and had a delicate temperament. On the stall in front of her were a few ancient books, a few jade slips, and a few simple and unadorned scrolls. Next to them were a few simple and unadorned cauldrons. There were also many jade bottles placed in front of her. "Senior, do you want to buy some medicinal pills? I have aura-converging pills here. They're used to assist in cultivation and are useful for chi refining cultivators. I also have soul-returning pills, which can allow foundation-building cultivators to quickly recover their true essence. I also have miasma-dispelling pills and spirit-concentrating powder. They're all very good medicinal pills. I heard that the Qin clan's groomed search this time is to enter the Qin domain. If there's danger inside, it definitely won't be wrong to bring more medicinal pills. The young girl blinked her eyes. When she saw Di Shutian squatting down in front of her stall, she immediately became interested. She promptly introduced them with great effort. Miasma-dispelling pills could dispel miasma. As long as they were taken, the majority of miasma could be dispelled, allowing one to walk through miasma. As for spirit concentrating powder, it could allow one to concentrate even more during cultivation and not be distracted by external matters. It could increase the effectiveness of cultivation as much as possible and increase one's cultivation. They were all very good medicinal pills. I didn't come here to buy medicinal pills. What's recorded in these ancient books and jade slips? With an indifferent expression, Di Shutian pointed at the ancient books and jade slips in front of him and asked. When it came to medicinal pills, he had a lot of stock after killing the group of rogue cultivators in the southern wilderness. He had all of the medicinal pills on display in the stall and in his storage bag. Naturally, he didn't need to waste time on this and directly stated his purpose. Medicinal pills. Almost all of the items on this stall were related to alchemy. Di Shutian was very interested in alchemy. Although he had a heaven-ranked demon abode and didn't need to refine those spiritual herbs at all, he could directly use the demon refining cauldron to completely refine all the power contained within. However, alchemy techniques were even more amazing. To be able to combine several different spiritual herbs, to refine all kinds of different medicinal pills, and to be able to bring out 150% or 200% of the medicinal power contained in the spiritual herbs, it could be said to be miraculous. When he was in the valley, he relied on soul-gathering pills to embark on the path of demon cultivation. He had already developed an interest in alchemy. However, previously in the southern wilderness, he couldn't come into contact with things in this area at all. Now that he saw many items related to alchemy in the stall, he couldn't help but want to see if he could buy an ancient book for alchemy. If he had time in the future, he could try to refine some medicinal pills to enhance the cultivation of the cadre in the Myriad Demon Valley. Senior, are you talking about these ancient books? When the little girl heard this, she glanced at him curiously and said, "These ancient books are beginners of alchemy, which is for beginners to learn alchemy. These jade slips are vermilion bird pill technique, which contains a set of unique vermilion bird pill seal, which is used for alchemy and can enhance the success rate of alchemy. You want to learn alchemy?" At the end, the little girl asked curiously. However, she immediately recovered and knew that she had asked something she shouldn't have asked. She quickly stuck out her little tongue. "Oh, if I want this beginners of alchemy and vermilion bird pill technique, how many spirit stones would it cost?" Di Shutian didn't care and directly asked for the price. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com and read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 149. The basics of alchemy costs 500 spirit stones. The vermilion bird pill technique is a complete set of alchemy seals, so it's much more precious. It costs 3,000 spirit stones. If it weren't for the fact that my brother and I need spirit stones for our cultivation, I wouldn't have bought this set of ancestral pill techniques. The little girl looked at the jade slip inscribed with the vermilion bird pill technique with a hint of hesitation in her eyes. It should be known that in the immortal cultivation world, as long as one had a little bit of cultivation, they would know a little about alchemy. If one had a cauldron that could emit true samadhi fire, one could basically refine some simple pills. However, the failure rate was quite high. Naturally, the importance of a complete set of alchemy techniques was highlighted. Pill techniques were actually seals that were inserted into the pill cauldron during alchemy. These seals could help purify the impurities of the medicinal ingredients in the pill cauldron. It could better fuse various medicinal ingredients together and get rid of the impurities. It could also control the temperature of the fire, absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and integrate it into the pill. It could better assist in alchemy. It could be said that in alchemy, a good set of pill techniques was incomparably important. The vermilion bird pill technique wasn't a very powerful pill technique. According to the classification of heaven, earth, black, and yellow, it was only a set of yellow-level pill techniques. However, compared to the rarity of complete pill techniques in the cultivation world, this set of pill techniques could be said to be extremely precious. If it was taken out, there would definitely be no shortage of people who would want to buy it. 3,000 spirit stones. Sell it to me. This young master wants it. A complete set of pill techniques is quite rare in the cultivation world. I didn't expect to see it here. Shweta, give her the spirit stones. Just when Sakura was thinking about how to buy these two things, suddenly, a voice with a trace of arrogance directly butted in. The voice sounded as if it didn't care about the spirit stones at all. Moreover, as he spoke, a hand directly reached over and grabbed the jade slip that the little girl had pointed out alone on the ground, wanting to take it in his hand. Yes, young master. A respectful response was heard. Humph. Shirtian's originally indifferent gaze suddenly changed a few times before turning cold. His right hand instantly stretched out and transformed into a claw, grabbing forward with lightning speed. It landed on that person's wrist and forcefully grabbed it. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he didn't even use his demon chi. He directly used the strength of his demon chi to push that hand back. Bang! This unforeseen event happened too quickly. It was over in the blink of an eye. The owner of that hand was naturally shaken by this huge force. A muffled sound rang out in the air. Who are you? How dare you attack me? Are you tired of living? Sakura stood up and looked to his side. In front of him, a young man dressed in blood red clothes appeared in front of him. This person had an evil look on his face and looked at him with a cold expression. His eyes were full of arrogance and loftiness. A faint blood-red light flashed in his eyes, full of murderous intent. Behind this blood-red clothed youth, there were two cold-faced men with the same evil aura. One on the left and one on the right, their bodies also emitted a threatening aura in an instant, pressing towards Shirtian. First come, first served. I want to buy this jade slip first. You interfered without reason, and you still want to ask who I am? The blood-red clothed youth's voice was cold, and Shirtian's voice was even colder. There was a trace of ruthlessness in his voice. He was not afraid of the aura that was pressing towards him. His eyes were like two sharp arrows, piercing towards the three people in an instant. The domineering aura pressed towards the three people like a tide. At this time, the other cultivators in the valley noticed the unforeseen event one by one, and they all gathered around. They began to discuss in low voices. However, when many people saw the blood-red clothed youth, a trace of fear flashed across their faces, and their feet unconsciously took a step back. TSK, TSK. Interesting, I didn't expect to meet someone who is not afraid of death in the Heart Melody Valley. Is our blood cloud sect too kind? The blood-red clothed youth felt the pressure from Shirtian's body, and his face changed slightly. However, the strange thing was that he was not suppressed by this pressure. Instead, there was a strange light in his eyes. He looked at Shirtian with a faint smile, and a cold, murderous intent flashed in the corner of his eyes. Shirtian did not show any signs of weakness. If they really wanted to fight, he would not back down. Retreating and tolerating were not his character. Just when the swords were about to be drawn, a series of hurried footsteps quickly came from the depths of the purple bamboo forest. Both of you, please wait. A faintly strange voice suddenly sounded in the valley. This voice seemed to contain a strange power, and it suddenly turned the tense atmosphere and the dense pressure that filled the surroundings into nothingness. It was as if a breeze had brushed past, taking away all the murderous aura. Today is the Heart Melody Valley, and it is not suitable for fighting. Consider yourself lucky. The blood-red, clothed youth revealed a trace of a strange smile and quickly retracted his aura. Looking at the newcomer, he smiled and bowed. Blood Cloud Sex Shwe Ini greets Uncle Chin. It is only a small conflict. How would I dare to trouble Senior to come here? It is really this Junior's fault. So his nephew Shwe Ini. There is no need to be so polite. The newcomer was dressed in Confucian robes and had the temperament of an elegant person. Although his footsteps were hurried, his temperament was not the slightest bit messy, and one could see the elegant demeanor of a scholar everywhere. His appearance was that of a middle-aged man, and he looked to be in high spirits as he smiled lightly. Behind him followed a person dressed like a butler and a few disciples. When the cultivators in the valley saw this person, their eyes all revealed respectful expressions. Obviously, they all roughly knew who this person was. Speaking of which, this was none other than the head of the Qin family, Qin Xian. His cultivation base was said to be that of a core formation cultivator. This kind of cultivation base was basically something that most cultivators could only look up to. I don't know why the two of you have a conflict. You should know that fighting has always been prohibited in my Zither Melody Valley. Qin Xian raised his eyes and swept his gaze over Di Shirtian. Feeling the clear indifference emanating from his body, as well as the natural, awe-inspiring prestige that seemed to possess the domineering aura of a king, he couldn't help but carefully observe him a few times. Senior Qin. Just when Di Shirtian was about to speak, the little girl who had been left to the side said with some apprehension, "This matter is actually because these two seniors wanted to buy a jade slip of the vermilion bird pill formula from this junior's hands. Thus the conflict arose." The little girl saw that this matter was caused by her, so she didn't stay out of it. Although her expression was apprehensive, she still explained the whole story of the matter in a few words. So it was like that. When Qin Xian heard this, realization dawned on his face. After looking at Di Shirtian and Shwe Ini, he pondered for a moment and said, "Since the two of you have taken a fancy to this pill art, then how about this? The one who offers the highest price and suits this little girl's preferences will be the one who owns it. I don't know if this is a suitable solution." After a slight pause, he proposed a solution. In fact, this seemed to be a bit similar to an auction. However, there were only two people being auctioned. One was Di Shirtian, and the other was Shwe Ini. This junior has no objections to Uncle Chin's words. "I am willing to pay 5,000 spirit stones for this pill art." Shwe Ini confidently smiled and looked at the little girl. As soon as he opened his mouth, he nearly doubled the price. It could be said that this wasn't a big deal. "I don't have spirit stones, but I do have a gourd of monkey wine." Di Shirtian's eyes flickered, but he also knew that this wasn't a good time to fight. If his identity was exposed, it would be very difficult for him to leave. He swiped the storage pouch at his waist, and a palm-sized jade gourd appeared in his hand. This was a gourd of monkey wine. Of course, it was only ordinary. It wasn't a 100-year-old treasure. He said, "Every time you take a small sip, it will be comparable to a spirit-gathering pill, and even slightly surpass it. The power contained in the wine is gentle, and there is no danger. I will use this gourd of monkey wine to exchange for the pill art." When these words were spoken, the surrounding cultivators' eyes immediately lit up. Many people even cried out in surprise. "It's really monkey wine? I heard that it's not ordinary wine, but spiritual wine. It's a holy item for cultivation. For qi condensation and foundation establishment cultivators, it's definitely a holy item for increasing their cultivation. Monkey wine is an immortal item among wines. It's said that it's incomparably delicious. I remember that last time in the Gathering Immortal City, a gourd of monkey wine was auctioned for a sky-high price of more than 10,000 spirit stones. It's a good item that can only be encountered but not sought." For a moment, even Qin Xian's eyes couldn't help but shine. He deeply looked at Di Shirtian's face. From time to time, his gaze wandered around the jade gourd. However, Shwe Ini's expression changed. He didn't expect that Di Shirtian would be able to take out such a treasure. "I want a monkey wine. I'll give you the pill art. Also, I'll give you this the first guide to pill concoction. When the little girl heard this, she clearly knew what kind of good item the monkey wine was. Her eyes sparkled as she quickly grabbed the jade slips and ancient books and placed them in D-Shirt-Yin's hands. Then, she took the jade gourd and gently opened it. Immediately, bursts of strange wine fragrance filled the air from the gourd, causing those who smelled it to feel refreshed and recover in an instant. That's right, this is indeed monkey wine. Qin Xian nodded, thoroughly confirming the authenticity of the wine. After he finished speaking, he swept his gaze over the surrounding cultivators and said with a smile, "Young talents coming to my Zither Melody Valley are all giving face to the Qin clan. This time, my daughter has called for a matchmaking convention because she wants to choose the most outstanding one among the many young talents. The convention will be held in 3 days. I hope that everyone can conserve their energy during these few days. If anyone causes trouble in the valley and fights privately, my Qin clan will have no choice but to expel them." The first sentence was polite, but the second sentence faintly carried a kind of deterrence, immediately causing the cultivators in the valley to shiver. "Uncle, rest assured, if anyone causes trouble in the valley, they will become enemies with my Blood Cloud sect. This junior will definitely not forgive them." Shuaini deeply looked at D-Shirt-Yan, traces of fierce killing intent flashing in his eyes. He chuckled on the surface. However, in his heart, he said coldly, "Humph, this brat who came out of nowhere actually dares to oppose this young master. These 3 days, I'll let you be free. When we enter the Zither realm, if I don't kill you, how can the hatred in my heart be appeased?" Unknowingly, D-Shirt-Yan made an enemy. He naturally saw the killing intent in Shuaini's eyes. However, if Shuaini wanted to kill him, how could D-Shirt-Yan not want to kill him? Hee, give me some recommendations. I'm doing my best to pave the way and make this Zither realm more exciting. While I'm at it, I'll also dig a few holes. If you're interested, you can guess. Chapter 150. Once bitten, twice shy. The moment Shuaini revealed his murderous intent, D-Shirt-Yan had already taken note of it. A murderous intent rose in his heart, and his unique aura seemed to have been triggered by Shuaini's murderous intent. It suddenly rose from his body, and in an instant, the terrifying aura of supremacy covered the entire valley. Fortunately, Sakura instantly realized that this was definitely not a good place to make a move. His aura was only slightly revealed before it was immediately retracted back into his body. It was so fast that it made people think that the aura that was like the might of the heavens just now was just an illusion. It was as if it had never appeared. However, Qin Xian's pupils contracted violently in an instant. When he looked at D-Shirt-Yan again, his gaze became exceptionally different. In the valley, the know-it-all who was chattering endlessly with another cultivator suddenly revealed a faint smile. However, it disappeared in the blink of an eye, and he continued to sell himself business. "What's your name?" D-Shirt-Yan ignored Shuaini and let the 3 of them leave angrily. He turned his head to look at the little girl who was hugging the jade gourd filled with monkey wine and said, "The monkey wine is very precious. I advise you not to leave the Heart Melody Valley if there's nothing else. Otherwise, there will be a disaster." Looking around, many cultivators were staring at the jade gourd. Their eyes were red, and they were ready to make a move. If not for the fact that fighting was prohibited in the Heart Melody Valley and Qin Xian personally came out, there would have been people who couldn't resist the temptation and made a move to snatch the gourd. After all, the monkey wine was a rare spiritual wine in the immortal cultivation world. It was incomparably beneficial for increasing one's cultivation. Moreover, the power contained in the wine was gentle and easy for people to absorb. Such a treasure, whoever saw it would be tempted to snatch it and make it their own. When these cultivators were coveting it, D-Shirt-Yan felt strands of desire that others couldn't see suddenly rush into his body like swallows returning to their nest. They were quickly swallowed by the 7 Sins demonic Zither in the demon residence. The demonic aura on the jade Zither also became denser. Lindai blinked her eyes and cheerfully said, "Thank you, Senior. Lindai will not leave the valley. Once the groom search is over, I will go to the Qin family to become a disciple." Speaking of the Qin family, a yearning expression appeared on her face. "Your name is Lindai?" At this moment, Qin Xian glanced at her and suddenly nodded. "Although you only have a medium-grade spiritual root, whether or not you can enter my Qin family is not the most important thing. What matters is whether or not you have talent in music. If you're willing, you can go to the villa and give it a try." After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked into the depths of the bamboo forest. He left. It was as if he didn't take away half a cloud when he came and went. Indra stared at Qin Xian's back as he gradually left. He didn't withdraw his gaze for a long time. He felt that there was a kind of temperament on Qin Xian's body that was different from other cultivators. No matter if it was walking or talking, every movement seemed to have a strange rhythm. It was as if every movement of his body was combined with some kind of rhythm. The Qin family is really not simple. As expected of a family that specializes in music, it seems that under the influence of music, one's entire body will produce a strange temperament. It is closer to the fluctuations of music. It makes one's body have a kind of charm. Inwardly muttering to herself, she withdrew her gaze and bought a pill cauldron from Lindai. This pill cauldron was only a low-grade magical item, but it was still far more expensive than an ordinary magical item. She also had various pill recipes on her body. All of these things added up to a gourd of monkey wine. Then, he directly found a secluded corner in the purple bamboo forest and sat down. He silently closed his eyes and activated the demon refining cauldron in the demon residence. At the same time, he absorbed the power of desire in the valley. It was worth mentioning that when he absorbed the power of desire, he found that the power of desire in the valley seemed to be much less than outside. Moreover, what he absorbed was the power of desire from the cultivators who came from outside. Could it be that music can purify desire? A fleeting thought flashed through his mind. However, in the blink of an eye, he continued to immerse himself in cultivation. If a demonic beast wants to continue moving forward, it must form a demonic vein, shatter the original meridians, and then use demonic essence and secret techniques to form a unique demonic vein. Every time a demonic vein is formed, it will advance one step. Now, after accumulating demonic essence for a period of time, it is completely enough to form the first demonic vein and advance to the middle stage of demonic beast. However, when forming it, I will not be able to restrain my own demonic essence. In the demon residence, the demonic liquid in the demon refining cauldron had risen to a third. The black demonic liquid cauldron emitted waves of terrifying fluctuations. It was as calm as a pool of stagnant water. Above the demonic liquid, a cloud of black fog hovered above. Drops of black liquid would drip down every once in a while and merge with the demonic liquid below, becoming a part of it. Demonic essence rushed out of the demon refining cauldron, out of the demon residence, out of the heart, and poured into the meridians all over his body. Along the meridians, strands of demonic essence seeped out of the meridians and entered the flesh all over his body. It merged with every inch of his body and made his demonic body stronger. There were two sets of meridians in his body. One was the meridians of his demonic body. There were only 3 of them. One started from the head and connected to the entire body. The other 2 were connected to the hands and feet. When the 3 were connected, it was a complete set of meridians that flowed through the entire body. These were the original meridians of the demonic body. The other set was the meridians of a human body that were formed by the mystic moon shape-shifting technique. However, these 2 types of meridians had to be abandoned on the path of demonic cultivation, forming a demonic vein, forming a brand new demonic vein, forming a demonic vein that was truly connected to the demon residence. For example, the demon residence was the Dantian. Now that the demon residence was not truly connected to the Dantian, it was naturally difficult to perfectly channel demonic energy. With the demon residence as the point, forming a new demonic vein would allow demonic essence to surge out of the demon residence and flow along the demonic vein. If spiritual beasts were to open their spiritual cavities and demons were to accumulate demonic energy, connect their meridians, and open up the demon residence, then demonic beasts were to form demonic veins, and form demonic veins again, and then form an inner core. I wonder what kind of place the Guqin territory will be like. Maybe I can form my first demonic vein in the Guqin territory. Sakura started to ponder in his heart. He did not enter the Guqin Melody Valley for the betrothal. He only wanted to learn the music technique of the Qin family and learn how to play the Guqin. The other things were not very important. He just happened to be in time for the betrothal. In the valley, he had heard of the Guqin territory many times. He only knew that it was a forbidden area of the Qin family. He had no idea what was inside. He could not help but be curious. He secretly decided to enter the Guqin territory once. First, he could find an opportunity to form his demonic vein and raise his cultivation to the mid-stage of demonic beast. That way, his ability to protect himself in the human world would be greatly increased. Second, he might be able to use this opportunity to enter the Qin family. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed quietly. Dang, dang, dang. On the morning of the third day, 3 simple bell sounds rang out in the Guqin Melody Valley. The sound of the bell seemed to contain a kind of purifying power. All the cultivators in the valley felt as if they had drunk a bowl of iced pear on a hot summer day. Cooling from head to toe, they subconsciously immersed themselves in a kind of beautiful state of mind. Their originally chaotic and irritated emotions gradually calmed down. Their consciousness faintly sublimated under the sound of the bell, and they could feel it growing a little bit. The Guqin Melody Valley's Spirit Awakening Bell is indeed worthy of its reputation. It was right to come this time. In the valley, the youth holding the mountain and river fan slightly waved the folding fan in his hand with a strange look on his face. He said, "Legend has it that the Spirit Awakening Bell is a treasure of the Qin family. This bell has the miraculous power of dispelling inner demons and cleansing the mind. If you listen to it often, it can prevent inner demons from forming and cleanse the marrow. Seeing it today, it is indeed magical." Shuaini, who was wearing a blood-red robe, looked in the direction of the bell. A trace of greed and strong desire to possess flashed in his eyes. In 3 days, the number of cultivators in the Guqin Melody Valley had reached more than 3,000. At this time, under the sound of the bell, they all stood solemnly and looked at the Qin family manor. In the sound of the bell, a group of people walked out from the purple bamboo forest. In the lead was the Qin family head, Qin Xian, whom they had already met before. On his left and right were a beautiful woman and a young girl with a veil covering her face. Behind them were 2 old men, one holding a purple flute and the other holding a jade flute. The rest were young disciples, both male and female. In total, there were more than 10 people. My Qin family is also honored that everyone has come to my Guqin Melody Valley. Qin Xian led the Qin family disciples into the valley. Facing the thousands of cultivators, he smiled without any restraint. He said, "My daughter, Katomi, is called the Jade Zither Fairy because of everyone's love. This time, I have called everyone here to find a Tao partner for my daughter, Katomi, who could support each other on her long journey to immortality. I believe everyone knows this." The valley was completely silent. This voice contained a strange charm, and it clearly spread throughout the entire valley and into the ears of every cultivator. It was clear and audible. At this time, a cultivator opened his mouth and said, "Mr. Qin, we all know this. Why don't you tell us the rules now?" However, this sentence also expressed the thoughts of the other cultivators. Qin Xian smiled faintly and glanced at the many young cultivators in front of him. His gaze paused on a few people, and he said, "Those who can come to the valley are all outstanding talents of the cultivation world, geniuses of their generation. There's only one daughter, and one daughter cannot serve two husbands. Therefore, who can become my daughter's Tao partner will have to depend on fate and the will of the heavens. My Qin family has been passed down to this day. Our ancestors once left behind a forbidden area in the back mountain called the Qin realm. The Qin realm is filled with great danger. Of course, as long as one enters, it is also a great opportunity. Even my Qin family's disciples can't easily enter. Chapter 151. The Zither realm is divided into the inner and outer realms. If you can pass the Zither realm, you can choose to become a disciple of the Qin family. Even if you fail, you can keep your life. But if you want to become my husband, you must enter the inner realms. Once you enter the inner realms, there are endless dangers. You can die at any time. When Qin Xian mentioned the Zither realm, his expression couldn't help but become solemn. The Zither realm was the most mysterious forbidden area of the Qin family. The outer realms were used to test those who wanted to become a disciple of the Qin family. Even if you failed this test, you would only fall into a coma. It wouldn't harm your life. Those who passed were qualified to become a disciple of the Qin family. And failure naturally meant that you didn't pass. All along, the Qin family had used this method to select disciples. As for the inner realms, that was the true Zither realm. The dangers inside could take a person's life at any time. Even the Qin family members didn't dare to rashly set foot in there. Those who truly entered were few and far between. However, within the inner realms of the Zither realm, while there were dangers, there were also opportunities. For example, one could find the magic treasures, magic tools, or cultivation techniques of cultivators who died there. Of course, there were also unique things inside. What? People can die in the Zither realm? We've finally gotten lucky this time. I heard that the Qin family hasn't recruited disciples for several decades. Now, one can join the Qin family by passing the outer realms. Legend has it that the Qin family's 1,000 illusionary immortal sound technique is a supreme technique for sound attacks. After learning it, one song can create 1,000 illusions. Even if you can't pass the inner realms test, entering the Qin family is still a great benefit. Haha, I've always thought that I'm a top genius in music. This time, I must enter the Qin family. Qin Xian's words immediately caused an uproar among the cultivators in the valley. Although the Qin family was only a cultivation family, it was very famous in the cultivation world. It wasn't because of anything else, but because the power of sound attacks was too mysterious and too powerful. Usually, a core formation realm cultivator who understood music could fight against 2 or 3 cultivators of the same level. If one's mastery of music was high enough, even if they fought against a cultivator of a higher level, they could challenge someone of a higher level. Therefore, very few people dared to provoke such a family. In the past few years, the Qin family had always prioritized the disciples of the main family and rarely recruited disciples from the secular world. This time, the Qin clan was actually recruiting rogue cultivators who could pass the test with great fanfare. This was indeed a sensational matter. Moreover, these rogue cultivators who could come were all young cultivators with decent cultivation. If they entered the Qin clan, it would be equivalent to making the Qin clan several times stronger out of thin air. This move by the Qin family was clearly brilliant. The expressions of many of the cultivators in the valley changed. Clearly, they'd realized the Qin clan's objective and the consequences of their actions. Shui Ini's expression kept changing. He thought to himself, "Good job, Qin Xian." He can even think of using this betrothal contest to increase the strength of the Qin family. They are really old foxes. However, as long as I can marry your daughter, the Qin family will be mine sooner or later. Amazing! Di Shirtian had the experience of his previous life, and he admired the Zither clan's actions even more. It was truly amazing. It was like trying to gain something without risking anything. Amazing, really amazing. Many of the people who came from their families or sects all had different thoughts in their minds. Qin Xian didn't care what others thought and continued. In the inner domain of the Qin domain, there is a life-bound magic treasure used by my Qin family's ancestor, the green jade zither. This time, entering the Qin domain, whoever can find the green jade zither and take it out of the Qin domain will be my daughter Katomi's Tao companion. If no one can find it, it means that my daughter's Tao companion has yet to appear. This betrothal contest is also cancelled. No one noticed that when he said these words, there was always a trace of guilt in his eyes, and he was very hesitant. Father, daughter wants to say a few words. At this moment, the veiled girl turned to Qin Xian and said. Qin Xian frowned slightly, but he still nodded. He took a step back and let the girl in front. When the cultivators saw Katomi come forward, suddenly, the valley became silent again. When Shuaini saw Katomi, his eyes showed a strange light, and a strong desire to possess rose in his heart. He thought to himself, this girl should be the Zither fairy. The news I got was right. She has such a strong extreme Een power. She must have the legendary 9 Een divine meridian. Women with this kind of 9 Een divine meridian are born to be the best furnace. If I can get her primordial Een, my blood cloud eclipse technique will definitely improve rapidly, and maybe it will reach perfection. I must get her. However, many cultivators seem to be shining with a strange light. When they looked at Katomi, their eyes became burning. This little girl is Katomi. The test in the Zither domain this time is very dangerous. If your cultivation hasn't reached foundation establishment, I hope you won't recklessly enter the Zither domain. The green silk Zither is my Zither clan's most precious treasure. Unfortunately, it has been lost in the Zither domain. Katomi has loved the Zither since she was young. It is a pity that she can't see the family's most precious treasure with her own eyes. So, she swore since she was young that whoever can find the green silk Zither will be Katomi's Tao partner. Katomi's marriage depends on the green silk Zither. No matter who it is, as long as they can get it back, Katomi will abide by the oath. Qin Xian's red lips parted slightly as she slowly uttered a sentence. Her voice reverberated in the valley like the sound of nature, causing people to unconsciously feel a sense of amazement. Many cultivators on the spot were excited and shouted, Zither fairy, please don't worry. This time, so many of us will go in. I don't believe we can't find a Zither. That's right. Even if we have to risk our lives, we will find a Zither and give it to the fairy. For a moment, the crowd was excited. All right, a month is the limit. If we still can't find it after a month, we must leave the Zither domain. Qin Xian raised his hand and said, Now, Elder D and Elder Xiao will lead everyone to the Zither domain. When the two old men behind him with the purple flute and jade flute heard this, they walked out at the same time. They glanced at the cultivators in front of them and said, Everyone, please follow us to the back of the mountain. After saying that, the two of them soared into the air and quickly led the way to the back of the mountain. The cultivators in the valley were all excited and followed one after another. Many thoughts flashed through their minds. Interesting. I like to see what mysteries there are in the Zither domain. What is the difference between the outer and inner regions? Di Shurtian didn't use the Imperial Wind technique. If he did, his identity would immediately be exposed. He only stuck a divine travel talisman on his body and followed the large group of cultivators forward. As he hurried along, he pondered in his mind. He pondered over the information that Qin Xian and the others had just revealed about the Guqin realm. He was certain that what was said just now was only the most superficial information about the Guqin realm. It was absolutely impossible for them to say everything that truly existed. After all, the Guqin realm was a forbidden area of the Qin family. If he spoke about it thoroughly, wouldn't everything be exposed? For example, what was in the outer and inner regions of the Zither domain were not mentioned. It was clear that there were hidden things that couldn't be revealed to others. Since the outer region is used to test the Qin family's disciples and to enter the sect, it definitely won't be too difficult. However, the outer region is definitely not suitable for me to break through and form a demonic vein. Maybe it won't even be able to hide my demonic aura. If I want to form a demonic vein, I must enter the inner region. Shirtian's eyes flashed with wisps of wisdom. Of course, he was even more curious about the zither domain. The zither realm was a forbidden area of the zither family, or perhaps a place for seclusion. Even the most precious treasure of the Ancestor could be lost in there. Did that mean that there were other treasures besides the verdant zither? The opportunity that Qin Xian spoke of was deeply engraved in his mind. They pondered the entire way as they followed behind the two Qin family elders. After a quarter of an hour, the several thousand cultivators finally stopped at a strange location. Look, is this the zither domain? Why is it covered in fog? I can't see what's inside at all. This place is so big. How come we've never seen such a place before? It's so strange. Everyone look, there's such a big tablet here. When Elder D and Elder Xiao stopped, most of the cultivators realized that they might have arrived at their destination. They all looked around and exclaimed in surprise. Shirtian also looked around and couldn't help but frown. In front of him, there was a mysterious area covered by white fog. He didn't know how big it was, but the white fog was constantly rolling. Inside, there were faint sounds of music. There were flute sounds, zither sounds, and also the sounds of other musical instruments. These sounds intertwined with each other, giving this place a hint of mystery. Finally, he turned his gaze to the huge stone tablet in front of the fog. Zither Domain, a peerlessly beautiful woman, was sitting in the clouds. On her lap was an ancient zither. It was a 7-string zither. Her slender fingers fluttered across the strings as if they were moving clouds and flowing water. Waves of heavenly music resounded throughout the world. Listening to the zither music made people unconsciously immerse themselves in it, immersing themselves in the artistic conception of the zither music. That was a kind of smoothness like high mountains and flowing water. It was as if one could feel the rushing of a river, the majesty of mountains and rivers, the charm of nature, and all kinds of feelings, as if it was real. The sound of the zither was either high or low, a peerless melody, and when the zither music was at its smoothest, an inconceivable change occurred. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.qijian.com to read more chapters. Support the author. Support legal reading. Chapter 152. Boom, boom, boom. Sakura could hear the artistic conception of high mountains and flowing water in the zither music, as if he was in a tranquil world with mountains and rivers. However, along with the impassioned zither music, there was a sudden change, and a torrential river appeared out of thin air in the void. The river water in the river ran through the heaven and earth, surging over. Although it looked calm, this river seemed to be a sleeping, ferocious beast. It was a huge mountain that was extremely majestic. Its steep and heavy aura spread out. Sakura was aghast. This mountain, this water, he could feel that they were all evolved from the sound of the zither. With the supreme artistic conception in the sound of the zither, it could summon the mountain and water. Such an action was earth-shattering. The mountains and rivers moved along with the sound of the guqin. Every note could cause the mountains and rivers to undergo astonishing changes. When the sound of the guqin was hurried, the undercurrents in the river surged and roared crazily, as if they were about to dive down and sweep across the world. The giant mountains shook, and from afar, they were about to crush the heavens. Ding dong, ding dong. The sound of the zither suddenly became hurried. Boom, boom, boom. That big river roared and swept towards Indra. The momentum was like a heavenly river, and a terrifying force pressed down on him. Shirtian let out a muffled groan. His mind returned to his body, and he broke away from the stone tablet. His forehead was dripping with cold sweat. He was horrified and did not dare to look at the stone tablet again. He thought to himself, how terrifying. Who left this stone tablet behind? Could it be the ancestor of the Qin family? To be able to leave such an artistic conception in the tablet, and to be able to pull one's mind into the tablet without any warning. If this woman was still alive, I wonder how high her cultivation level would be. She could use the music of the zither as a manifestation. I could hear mountains and rivers in the music, but she could manifest the will of the zither and turn it into a long river and a tall mountain. Could this be the artist's sound attack? Thinking of that inconceivable scene, the shock in Sakura's eyes gradually faded away. What replaced it was a strong confidence. The scene that he had just seen at the same time had caused him to be shocked. It had also undoubtedly pointed out a path for him. If the sound of the zither can reach such a level, then I will definitely be able to do the same in the future. If an ordinary song can have such power, then wouldn't it be even more shocking and frightening if I played the Seven Sins Divine Melody? In the future, the Wan B sect will be more confident. The more D. Shirtion thought, the more determined and unshakable he became. Standing in front of the stone tablet, Elder D and Elder Shao waved their sleeves and said, "Everyone, this is the forbidden area of the Qin family, the Zither realm. In a moment, when everyone enters the Zither domain, there will be a first test. Those who pass will have two choices. The first is to join my Zither clan. The second is to continue to enter the Zither domain. If you enter the inner domain, you will die. Or not, it is up to you. Or not, it is up to you. Everyone, the two of us will go first. We will wait for you in the Heavenly Music Pavilion." After saying that, Elder D and Elder Shao looked at each other and smiled faintly. They waved their long sleeves and walked into the white fog behind the stone tablet. Strangely enough, as soon as their figures came into contact with the white fog, the fog began to roll violently. In the blink of an eye, the two of them were swallowed by the fog. Not a trace of their figures could be seen. They walked away in an extremely free and easy manner. The thousands of young cultivators were left looking at each other in front of the fog. D. Shirtion looked around casually. It was as if he was the only one who had experienced the scene just now. The others didn't react when they saw the stone tablet. He was secretly surprised. "Shweta, let's go in." The bloodstained clothes carefully examined the fog in front of him, then said to the two middle-aged cultivators behind him. He prepared to enter the Zither domain, but before he entered, he glanced around. His eyes flashed as he said, "You two, pay close attention to the person who dares to humiliate me. Once he enters the Zither domain, it's fine if he enters the outer domain, but once he enters the inner domain, capture him. I want him to know the consequences of offending me." The bloodstained clothes. His voice was cold, and his eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. "Yes, young master." When Shweta and Shwe heard this, killing intent naturally burst out from their bodies. They quickly scanned the cultivators, and their eyes fell on D. Shirtion. To be able to find him so quickly, it was simply because Sakura had a unique temperament. Aloof, cold, and aloof, he was unable to blend in with the surrounding crowd. There was a scene of a crane standing out from a flock of chickens. It was simply too easy to find him. There's killing intent. When D. Shirtion saw Shweta and Shwe's eyes fall on him, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. The hair on his body stood on end, and he immediately turned his head to look. When he saw Shwe and the other two, he raised his eyebrows, and a trace of killing intent burst out from his body. It seems that Shwe really does plan to kill me in the Zither realm. However, it's still uncertain who will kill who. Shwe's cultivation was already at the foundation establishment stage. However, there was a trace of evil aura emanating from his body. It was likely that he didn't use proper methods to reach the foundation establishment stage. He might have taken a shortcut. Shweta had just entered the core formation stage, and Shwe was in the late foundation establishment stage. With the three of them together, they were definitely a powerful force among the thousands of cultivators present. "Let's go." After a moment of hesitation, all the cultivators began to move towards the huge fog. When they arrived in front of the fog, the scene of the two elders D and Shao earlier appeared once again. The white fog rolled and swallowed all the cultivators nearby. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. However, with the previous example, no one was afraid, and they all follow behind. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the cultivators were swallowed by the white fog. Tion didn't hesitate too much. He steadily walked forward and approached the white fog. When his body came into contact with it, the fog in front of him suddenly expanded like before. His entire body was covered by the fog in an instant. Then, he felt a strange force binding his body and pulling him forward. The scene in front of him suddenly changed. In the purple bamboo forest, Qin Xian and the others watched as thousands of cultivators entered the zither realm one after another. The beautiful woman standing beside Qin Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Husband, look at these thousands of cultivators. Which one of them is worthy of our daughter? I see that you have been going out a lot these past few days. I presume you already have an answer in your heart." "Mother, I've already said that our daughter's marriage is decided by fate. Why are you talking about this again?" Katomi's face was covered by a veil, but a layer of pink appeared on her swan-like neck. She said shyly, "Ha!" Qin Xian chuckled softly. He took a deep breath and said, "Although marriage is decided by the heavens, and whoever can bring back the zither will be your husband, Ancestor, I have observed carefully in the past few days. If there really is someone who can find the zither and bring it out safely, it should be one of them." Finding the verdant zither wasn't considered a success. Whoever could truly bring it out would be the final winner. Therefore, this test wasn't just about luck, but more about strength. Otherwise, even if you found the zither, it would be snatched away halfway. Anything could happen. Therefore, strength was the most important thing. Why are you still keeping us in suspense? Just say it. I also want to know what kind of young elites came this time. Madame Qin rolled her eyes at him. There was a hint of curiosity in her expression. There are a total of 5. The young master of the Blood Cloud sect, Shui Imi, is extremely ruthless. His cultivation has already reached the foundation establishment stage. Coupled with the Blood Cloud sect's ultimate technique, the Blood Cloud Eclipse technique, which is extremely terrifying, he is the strongest among the cultivators who came this time. The second is the young master of the Water Moon Paradise, Shui Wuan. It is said that he has a gentle temperament and likes beautiful things the most. In terms of temperament, he is the most suitable for Ancestor. Qin Xian obviously knew about this long ago. Now, he was talking nonstop, as if he was very familiar with it. After a pause, he continued, "The third is a wandering cultivator. Moreover, he is a martial cultivator. His name is Wu Wudi. He has already stepped into the body-tempering realm. He is equivalent to a foundation establishment cultivator. He is only a step away from the tendon-changing realm. He is very strong." When Qin Xian mentioned Wu Wudi, a hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. On the purple gold continent, there were demons and cultivators. In the cultivation world, they were divided into immortal cultivators and martial cultivators. Immortal cultivators cultivated the origin spirit and used it to execute mystical abilities and control magic treasures. The powerful ones could almost topple mountains and overturn seas and had great power. As for martial cultivators, they cultivated the physical body and flesh shell. According to legends, when they reached the shattering void tier, they could shatter the void with one hand and enter the heavenly realm. However, immortal cultivators were the most widespread in the present continent. After all, who didn't yearn to be able to control a sword and enter the 9 heavens? As for martial cultivators, they only cultivated the body. Not only was it more difficult than immortal cultivators, every step forward required great hardship and effort. To put it bluntly, martial cultivators were a kind of ascetic cultivators. Who was the 4th? Madame Qin was even more interested. Not only her, but the Qin family disciples here also pricked up their ears, afraid to miss anything. The 4th is a recent outstanding disciple of the profound Heartsword sect, Lu Xiling. His cultivation is not the slightest bit inferior to the first 3. However, this person's nature is too narrow-minded and vengeful for the smallest grievance. He's not a good person that can be entrusted to everyone. He shook his head slightly. obviously having some opinions about this Lu Xiling. However, he didn't discuss it too much and continued, "Speaking of the first four, I have an idea in my heart, but this fifth person, these few days, I only found out that he's called Di Shirtian and know nothing else. What I can be sure of is that this person is definitely not an ordinary person. Previously, Di Shirtian took out monkey wine worth 10,000 gold in exchange for a set of alchemy techniques without blinking, and was seen by Qin Xian, who couldn't help but remember it in his heart. Paying attention, he actually discovered that even with his cultivation, he couldn't see through the other's strength. It was as if the other's entire body was shrouded in a dense fog, bottomless. After inquiring carefully, he understood that this person had no reputation at all in the cultivation world, as if he suddenly appeared. Very mysterious. Katomi was very shy about discussing this kind of matter that concerned her life, but she still listened carefully. When she heard that there was actually a person that even her father couldn't see through, she couldn't help but secretly feel a trace of curiosity. She raised her head and looked at the Qin domain's location and said lightly and elegantly, "Who exactly is it? We still need to see if they can pass the first test, the test of the heart-refining sound." Using new chapters to ask for votes. First update. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 153. Leaving aside Qin Xian and the other experts among the cultivators who came this time, Sakura, on the other hand, felt a mysterious power that he couldn't break free from when he was pulled in by the white mist. In the blink of an eye, he was out of the white mist, but the scene before him stunned him. This is... He frowned slightly. In front of him was a purple bamboo forest. There were no cultivators in the forest, only him standing there. A gentle breeze blew past, causing the bamboo leaves to rustle. The leaves rustled in the wind, and the rustling of the leaves seemed to form a strange melody. It caused all the living beings in the area to feel a sense of tranquility. Ding, 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 dong, dong, ding, ding, dong. Amidst the rustling of the bamboo leaves, there was a sound of a zither mixed in with the wind. It was perfect when combined with the bamboo leaves. It was like the sound of nature. When Di Shirtian heard it, he unconsciously felt a sense of calmness in his mind. He felt like he was about to fall asleep. This zither music is strange. Sakura's mind was absent-minded for a moment before he abruptly came back to his senses. His eyes shone brightly as he instantly understood that this zither sound was definitely not an ordinary zither sound. There was a mysterious power in it. Ding dong, ding dong. The zither music continued to enter his ears and mind. Although Di Shirtian knew that there was something strange about this zither music, he couldn't stop it at all. This zither music was like a gentle breeze that entered his body. Even if he sealed his six senses, he still couldn't stop it. It didn't enter his ears, but it directly sounded in his mind. Zither realm, zither realm. Since I can't stop it, I want to see what this zither music is trying to do. Di Shirtian raised his eyebrows. When the Qin family came in, they had already said that the zither realm was divided into inner and outer realms. The outer realm was a test for the Qin family to recruit disciples. There was no danger even if he didn't pass it. At most, he would be unconscious for a while. He believed that the Qin family wouldn't dare to lie about this. Thus, he didn't try to stop him. Looking around, he sat down cross-legged in the middle of the bamboo forest, closed his eyes, and listened attentively. When he heard this, countless images suddenly appeared in his mind. His mind suddenly became absent-minded, and countless memories surged out from the depths of his heart like lightning. His entire mind appeared in a strange place. In this place, he saw a familiar scene. There were people and things, endless traffic and tall buildings. This was actually his previous life. From the moment he was born, he had personally witnessed his mother die in front of him due to her weakness after giving birth. In the D clan, he was doted on by everyone. When he was 14 years old, he left home and relied on his incomparable talent to make a name for himself in the business world. Step by step, he built his own business empire. At this moment, Tion seemed to be in a miraculous state. Everything that he had experienced since he was young was replaying before his eyes. This was a dream, or perhaps an illusion. All kinds of good and bad things were presented before him. As for Tion himself, he was like a spectator standing in the clouds and watching quietly. He realized that he wasn't incapable of action. He had the powerful strength of a demon and could intervene in the world below at any time. He could easily change the wrong decision and prevent things that shouldn't have happened from never happening. For example, his stepmother, Nangong Xin, and his younger brother. If he wanted to, he could easily change the tragedy of the battle for the throne that was about to happen. However, Tion didn't. He continued to watch indifferently as the things that he had experienced before replayed before his eyes time and time again. Bang! When a gunshot sounded, the scene of being shot in his previous life replayed again. After the gunshot, the things in front of him suddenly seemed to be in a long river of time, flowing backward rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it returned to the moment when he was born. Everything that he had experienced in his previous life appeared once before, returning to the beginning and continuing to appear in front of his eyes. Repeatedly, in an endless cycle. Reincarnation. It seemed to be deliberately attracting Tion to step in and change something. His eyes stared blankly at the scene of his previous life, over and over again. Tion remained unmoved. When the cycle repeated 9 times, finally, the vicissitudes of life in his eyes became more profound, like a pool of dead silence. He said indifferently, "The past is the past and cannot be changed. In this life, I am a demon, and my future will be controlled by me. My life is mine to control, not the heavens. Only I will exist." With this sentence, the scene in front of him immediately changed inconceivably. Everything in front of him collapsed in an instant, breaking into countless pieces and entering Tion's body. Swish! His originally closed eyes suddenly opened, and 2 threatening rays of light shot out. The aura of solipsism that existed in his body suddenly condensed and became stronger. His gaze was deep, but his heart was exceptionally calm, as if there was something extra. His mind became more determined and unshakable. The demon's sense in his body seemed to have been refined, becoming more solid and pure. The power of the demon's sense almost doubled. No matter the previous life or the current life, I am me. As soon as the voice came out, the world fell silent. Following the sound of the zither, he naturally walked in a direction. The reason why the zither realm was divided into inner and outer realms was that the outer realm only tested one's will. The zither music that Tion heard earlier was called the heart-refining song. When this song was played, it could affect one's mind and outline one's life experience. Then, these memories evolved into a heart-refining illusion. In the illusion, one could clearly see every detail of one's life since birth. All kinds of happiness and regret could be clearly seen. In this illusion, there was almost no difference between the things inside and the reality. It was completely related to one's own past. In the process of watching one's own past, as long as one's mind was slightly moved and wanted to change something, one's mind would immediately be confused by the illusion, replacing the original mind with the past. At that time, the illusion was not just an illusion, but one's own experience and change. At the same time, one's mind would be immersed in it, gradually unable to distinguish whether it was an illusion or reality, unable to escape. Naturally, it meant that in this round, it would end in failure. Unless someone woke up with a unique method, one would be immersed in the illusion and unable to extricate themselves. The true meaning of the heart-refining illusion was to see through the past, grasp oneself, and even comprehend the future. As long as one could see through the past, one's mind would be cleansed, just like a cultivator suddenly having an epiphany. Naturally, one could break through this heart-refining illusion. One could obtain great benefits. Pada pada. Step by step, he walked forward. At this time, he looked around and found that in the originally empty purple bamboo forest, there were cultivators standing or sitting. These cultivators all had their eyes closed, and their faces were changing all kinds of expressions. It was as if they were cultivating a face-changing skill. It was really wonderful. Most of the people had cold sweat dripping from their foreheads. Obviously, they were deep in the illusion and could no longer distinguish between illusion and reality. Among the thousands of cultivators who were able to find their way forward with clear eyes, less than a third of them were able to do so. In total, there were only about 1,000 of them. As these cultivators walked forward, there was a faint look of joy on their faces. Obviously, they had obtained great benefits from the heart-refining song just now. Shuaini also saw through the illusion. Di casually glanced around and saw Shuaini walking into the Zither realm with 2 servants with a sinister look on his face. Well, if you failed in the outer region of the Zither realm, it would be really inconvenient for me to make a move on you. Sakra's heart was icy cold. He didn't look any longer and continued to walk forward. Not long after, he passed through this purple bamboo forest and saw that there was an open space in front of him. In the middle of it, there was an elegant ancient pavilion standing upright. Around the ancient pavilion, there were all kinds of strange flowers and herbs blooming. Waves of fragrance wafted over. It was elegant. In the pavilion, Elder D and Elder Shao, who had entered earlier, were sitting together and casually discussing some matters of music. They saw cultivators gradually walking out of the purple bamboo forest. Elder D smiled faintly and said, "Not bad. There are people coming out after 6 hours. Compared to those who entered in the past, this is much better. I remember that the fastest person to come out last time was 8 hours." His expression was full of praise. Elder Shao heard this and laughed heartily. "Brother D, don't you see? More than half of the young geniuses in the nearby cultivation world have gathered here for niece Katomi's groom search. Almost all of them are the current elites of the cultivation world. Their aptitudes are at least above average. It is reasonable for them to be able to come out in 6 hours." After he finished speaking, he revealed a deep smile and continued. This time, over 1,000 cultivators passed. Although many of them are from clans or sects, there should be a lot of rogue cultivators. When the time comes, perhaps many people will be willing to join my Qin clan, greatly increasing the foundation of my Qin clan's younger generation. This is great news for our Qin family. Elder D nodded in agreement. At this time, those who passed the test of the heart-refining song had basically all walked out of the purple bamboo forest and arrived in front of the ancient pavilion. After a rough count, there were only a little over 1,000 cultivators left. Elder Shao stood up and looked at everyone. He said in a deep voice, "What you have just experienced is our Qin family's unique heart-refining song. Those who passed will not only cleanse their minds, they will also be able to see through the miasma. In the future, the chances of inner demons appearing will be greatly reduced. Moreover, your spiritual sense will be tempered once. When you reach the core formation realm, there will be no obstacles. As long as you have the aptitude and can accumulate enough true essence, most of you will be able to reach the core formation realm. Now, I would like to ask if anyone is willing to join our Qin family and become a disciple of our Qin family." His tone was as if they had picked up a great bargain. One had to know that the heart-refining song could only be experienced once in a lifetime. It was a rare opportunity. Ordinary outsiders wouldn't have the opportunity to enjoy it. Alas, I was originally planning to update at midnight today. I believe everyone can tell from the time I updated the first chapter. However, I didn't expect to be stuck while writing this chapter. The pain of being stuck is unbearable. Heavens, for this chapter, I actually sat in front of the computer for 4 whole hours. Tonight, I will carefully organize my thoughts. Alas, I'm sorry everyone. I kept saying I would update more, but I didn't keep my promise. Rest assured, once I clear my thoughts, I will start to fulfill my promise. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.